evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Board, July 19th. And we start the Planning Board by, I'm still on hold? I gotta do it all over again?
Echo, echo, echo.
My ex-wife's cousin was a cab driver. He's blowing through the red lights.
You're on record. You want to get him in trouble, you're being recorded.
Nobody stops and goes.
Yeah,
Nobody stops.
it's optional, Red.
We live? We're live. Welcome to the Planning Board for July 19th, 2023. We apologize for the delay. We had some technical difficulties with the cameras. So with that, we start the Planning Board meeting by standing up and doing the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A few housekeeping items for safety. We have an exit in the back of the room. There's an exit to my immediate right. Please do not use the elevator. If you need help getting down the stairs, somebody will be there to help to assist and get you down there. In addition to that, any devices that you may have electronically, if you'd put them on vibrate or mute, that would be appreciative on that. And now with that, I'm going to introduce the board members, starting with the Director of Planning on my right, Mr. George Sioris.
Sorry, good evening.
We have Town Administrator Randy Chase. Oh, we have you hiding over there. We have Board Member Dan Healy.
Good evening.
We have Town Council Representative, Mr. Here we go again, Grenice, Dave Grenice.
Good evening.
We have the Vice Chair, Mr. Dave Nelson.
Good evening.
And I apologize, your name, ma'am?
Lisa Carvalho.
Lisa. Yeah, she's our recording secretary tonight. Way on the far left, we have Town Engineer, Mr. Mark LaRue.
Good evening.
We have Town Member, Mr. Chris Feinhall.
Good evening.
We have the member, Mr. Mark Connors.
Good evening.
Full member, we have Mr. Richard.
Malaby.
Thank you.
Good evening.
And we have our secretary, Mr. Andy Myers.
Hello.
And I'm the chair, John O'Connor. So with that, we're going to go to the approval of minutes. So do anybody have a motion?
No escrow?
What?
So moved to approve the minutes.
So we have a motion to accept the minutes. Any questions, any concerns? If not, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Do we have any abstentions? We have John Morrison, Mark Connors. I don't think you were here last time.
Oh, apologies, then I will abstain. My bad.
So you have that Mark abstained on that? And then we're going to go to correspondence to the secretary.
Mr. Chairman, all we have is a copy of this New Hampshire Town and City magazine, which I'm sure is available to anybody that wants to check it out.
Very good, appreciate that. We're going to move into other business, and the first item on that agenda is a second extension request, PID 05039, 74 Rockingham Road, Keystone, Derry. George, you want to update us on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is the mixed-use development on Rockham Road. Again, you can read the explanation from Tim Peliquin, who's here, by the way, the surveyor, if there's questions, but they still need a little bit more time to put some escrow together. They're waiting to get their final sewer discharge permit from the state. They're working out the bond and everything. So based on that, staff would recommend one more extension for 6 months.
Okay, and we have a motion in the back of,
Mr. Chair?
oh, Mr. Connors?
Just one question about this. On the back, it not only is asking for an extension, but it actually asks to amend and revise the site plan, George, because the building was too close to the road or something. So this is more than just an extension, it appears, that we're voting on. I just want to be clear on that. Is that correct?
That's something that I think It's not a change to the plan that, Mark, I think that's something that they're still working on in terms of the buildings that may affect some of the drainage.
But does that mean their plan needs to come back to us again then? Because we approved
If-
their plan. so-
If they do make a substantial change, you're going to come back to the board with that. But the discussion was that with the improvements, puts the front entrance to the building very close to the road, and he would like to modify that architectural design of that building to make them have a little more clearance.
So just want to be very clear that whatever motion we're approving tonight is not automatically giving them an okay on this other piece that they've asked. We're just giving them an
That would be
extension.
correct, yeah. Just to extend the approval from the initial one, and then if they do make changes, it would
Just the
come back.
existing approval.
Okay, when I read that, I thought that was interesting, so thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if there are no other comments from the, from board members, I'd like to make a motion.
yes.
All right, I move to approve an additional 6-month extension to the conditional approval granted on August 17, 2022 to Keystone Dairy LLC PID 05039, 74 Rockingham Road. The new expiration date will be February 19th, 2024.
Second. Okay, we have a motion, we have a
Double
second. I'm going to give that one to the vice chair. So she'll have the recording on that, that's Ms. Nelson. So starting with Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Panisse?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes on extension only, yep.
I'm sorry? Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That's got, extension got approved. The next item on the agenda has been deleted. He requested not to come tonight. So that could be a future event. So that's for Apollo Vineyard, so that will not be heard. So now we're going to go planning director and chairman updates. Do you have anything?
I just, I know there's several abutters here for the last project on the agenda, which is 109 Rockham Road, where the salvage yard is. So I see Doug McGuire, the engineer, is here. So Doug, since we have stuff ahead of you, Doug, would you guys see where the room behind us, where the clock is? If the abutters want to go in there with the engineer, you can look at the plan ahead of time, because it's going to take us some time on the other stuff. So Doug, if you don't mind taking, right behind us on the back room where the clock is, there's a side room in there. If the engineer can go in there with the plans and show the abutters, you can look at the plan while we're going through some of the other stuff, okay? And we'll come get you when the other items are done. So I know there's several people here.
Hopefully he tipped you off to that in advance.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Seven Hills Development LLC, PID 31013, 15 Madden Road. It's revocation of the site plan pursuant to RSA 676:4- capital A, parent 1, parent A. And most of that was a land taking because of 4A, and I don't know if you have anything further on that one there?
Yeah, just for the record, for some of the new members of the board, this is an unusual situation. We don't see this very often, but as you indicated, with the Exit 4A project that's under construction, eventually the connector road will be coming down Madden Road to Folsom Road at the curve. American Excavating, Tom Landon's here, the owner, had an approval for a third building out there along Madden Road, and the new connector road will be taking that building as part of the exit and the connector road. So a couple of things. We released the escrow last meeting.
Right.
And once you release the escrow, you have to revoke the approval. So this is a public hearing to revoke the approval, and the site plan will go away literally, because that building will never get built, and that's where the new connector road will be going. If you vision from 93, a straight shot road right down to Folsom Road at the bottom of the hill there. So it's a public hearing to require the revocation. Tom Landon, the owner, is here with Tim Peliquin, the surveyor, if there's any questions.
Okay, well, I don't think we need any further explanation from them. so
No,
we-
it's a public hearing, so if anybody wants to speak, you should open the public hearing.
Move to open the public hearing?
Second.
So we have a motion to open it and a second by Mr. Granese. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Granese?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes. Malaby.
Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Mayers?
Yes.
And the chairs. So the public hearing is open at this point in time. And if you have anything to say, please come forward, name your name and address, and what your questions are. If not,
Anybody online?
Mr. Chairman, seeing no one running to the forefront, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Grenice, a second by Mr. Nelson. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Now close. We'll wait for a motion unless there's some questions from the board.
Yeah, just a question, I just want a little bit of clarification on this. So there's a property taking here for exit 4A, and I guess I'll ask the question. My understanding is there was some issues related to property takings for Section A versus Section B, and is this tied up in that this is a property in Derry, but it was potentially in Project Phase A of 4A or not? This is part of 4B?
Just for the record, from what Mark's referring to, Project A is the diamond shape that you see on 93 under construction as we speak. Section B, or Project B, will be the connector road from the Diamond intersection through Londonderry, down
Which is
Madden
gonna come
Road,
later.
through Tom's property.
Okay.
And then Project C will be out to the police station down Shenango Road.
So this is a part of a property B taking, not a property A
yeah.
taking? Okay, thank you.
If you go up Madden Road, if you've ever been up there, you look, there's some single-family houses there. Tom's buildings are on the right.
Just unclear where that line was based on some of the stuff that was going on. So thank you for that clarification on the record.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if there's no other comments on the board, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to revoke the site plan approval granted by the board on March 3rd, 2004 pursuant to RSA 676:4A Alpha I India A Alpha, and to record a notice of revocation at the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds.
Second.
We have a motion, and we have a second. From Mr. Nelson, the motion was made by Mr. Grenice. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, that passes. Yep. Moving on to Marjorie A. Palmer, Revocable Trust. Marjorie A. Palmer, trustee, PID 03128, 14 Stock Road. It's a scenic road, public hearing, before we go into the lot subdivision.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, same thing, a little unique. We had this a couple of weeks ago with English Range Road. Stock Road is a scenic road, so we have to have a separate public hearing. So the first part of this will be the public hearing on the road only, to any improvements, trees, walls being removed, driveways,
Trees.
trees. So we have to hold a public hearing first. You have a staff report on that. Staff would recommend to let the work being done, and then the second part of will be the subdivision plan, which we'll get into right after this. So procedure, you have to open the public hearing, hear from Shane Genren representing Marge Palmer, and then come back, vote on that, and then go to the subdivision plan.
Move to open the public hearing?
Second.
We have a motion to open the public hearing, and we have a second. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to speak can come forward. Please put your name and address out there. If not, there is somebody coming forward.
Done this before, do I sit or just?
Yes, there should be, the mics are on, right?
Sit and get close to the mic so we can hear you and you're recorded on TV.
Oh, boy. Okay, so I'm Bill Mason. I live at 7 Stark Road, across the street from where these two lots are planned. And I did have a couple questions. Trees were mentioned. On my side of the road, the lots were clear cut. Is that the plan for these two lots on the other side, to cut down all the trees?
That was an error way back up there. What's that, 8, 9 years ago? They weren't supposed to be clear cut back then.
Yeah,
I would have to ask, I don't, if she's over here to speak, I don't know if the engineer's here. Oh, okay. Is that the only question you have, sir?
The other question was, are there plans to put a fire hydrant somewhere in that area with more houses coming in? I think the nearest one is a little ways down the road, and I don't know what the regulations are about.
I think it's 1,000 feet, Mr. Maru? you have to have one within 1,000 feet. If you don't have one, then you have an option of putting a sprinkler system inside your house. You don't have to have a fire hydrant down there.
Okay. I think that's it then, my concern is just it would be unfortunate to clear cut all those trees, so I'm hopeful that that's not the plan.
Okay?
I think that's all I've got.
He will probably answer that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody, before he comes up here, anybody else have any questions? I don't think they're planning clear cut.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
And we have a second. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Hanley?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Feinau?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. The public hearing is now closed. I'll bring it back to the board. Would you like to respond to those couple questions?
Sure. For the record, my name is Shane Genron. I'm employed with Herbert Associates. I represent Marjorie Palmer. She's here in the audience. As far as the questions the gentleman posed, we met with the TRC here in the town about a month ago. Mark LaRue, the fire, police. One of the concerns is site distance at this parcel, and we were asked to do some improvements along Stark Road, which include clearing the trees, removing the stone wall and pushing it back 15 feet on the property line, and doing some improvements along Stark Road for drainage. So from what I understand, the parcel, most of the big trees are right along the road, would need to be removed. So I just want to be very clear with the board. That's what we were requested to do. That's what these plans reflect. In order to gain the site distance that we need for the two proposed driveways, we are going to need to do some improvement work. As far as doing a hydrant, we have a note on our plan because this is only a two-lot subdivision. It doesn't make sense to do a cistern or a hydrant. We have a note that we're going to do sprinkler systems inside the buildings. I'm more than happy to go in more depth about the subdivision if you
Question
have
about the
questions.
trees, though. How far down you gonna go, just for the site?
They've asked us to
Beyond
do,
about the width of the property?
they've asked us to do improvements along the entire frontage. There's about 519 feet of frontage on Stark Road, and they've asked us to make these improvements along the entire frontage.
And that would take care of the snow removal too, when they're plowing?
Well, it's going to allow better maintenance for the town. It's basically giving an easement to the town to allow them to do future maintenance or anything that needs to be done. It'll also help achieve site distance, and it's going to help improve drainage along Stark Road.
And you're moving the stone wall back 15
Yes,
feet?
15 feet.
You thinking about replacing any of the trees with, say, arborvitaes?
I don't know if there's any plans for that right now. Mrs. Palmer is looking at subdividing the property because she could use the money to finance some other things she has going on right now, so.
Okay, oops, I'm sorry, Mr. Nelson.
So following up on the relocation of the stone wall, does the stone wall extend beyond the boundaries of the subject parcels?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
So you're going to move just that section of the wall back 15 feet. So the wall's going to go along the road, jut back 15 feet, and then jut back out.
I have no right to move a stone wall on someone else's property. I can only, they're asking me to move it on mine. I can only move it on my property. I can't move it on someone else's.
So let me just ask, do we really need to move it that far? Because that seems injurious to the overall scenic effect to move it that far.
I would just like, sorry,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. I'd just like to point out that the rise in elevation and the position of those trees within the roadway, I believe it's between 6 and 8 feet of height difference. And then these large trees are rooted right in the line of sight for any driveway to be able to get through. And you have to have 200 feet in each direction. And once you're back 10 feet from the edge of the pavement, that you have to eliminate not just the stumps and the trees. You have to cut probably, I want to say, 6 to 8 feet of material and regrade the approaches so that you can actually get a driveway. It's that steep right on the edge of the pavement.
Okay, so that explains why all the trees are going, but what about the stone wall? Why is it
The
15?
stone wall is right on that. It's mixed in with the trees. It kind of traverses in and out in between the trees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr.
So,
Connors now.
so, Mr. Chair, I looked at this, and this might be it's up to you, obviously, but this might be a good use of our technology in the room, because you can go on Google Street Maps, get down in front of this lot, and see exactly what Mr. LaRue is talking about. The dirt is up 6 or 8 feet, so it's an extremely straight-up slope. There's a rock wall along the top of it. The trees are in front of that. In between that and the road right now, it's like trees are right up to the road. To Mr. Nelson's point, this does more than just move the wall back. They're gonna cut the grade down. This is basically changing that from a scenic road. The wall being back 15 feet, I guess one of the questions I have, is there any requirement for them to at least then connect the wall back, because it's a contiguous wall? Otherwise, it's gonna be, wall, and then a wall 15 feet back, and so there's gaps. It's just, to me, I was trying to picture what it ends up looking like, and it doesn't, to me, end up being a scenic road anymore. So I don't know whether that gives us the right to kind of say, no, we don't like this, or whether we have to come up with a remedy. But I was trying to figure out where the solution is, always trying to figure out that middle ground. So I don't know, have you guys thought about this? How do you make it look like it's still an old farm wall that's continuing, even though it's, I realize you can't touch the other properties evidently, but this to me just is going to look like a jigsaw puzzle or something with some pieces missing.
Okay, Mr. LaRue.
I would just like to add one more note for the abutter that spoke, that before those homes were put in, it was the same dynamic on that side of the road, not as high, but trees were tight on the extremely large trees on the edge of the road, and the wall was interwoven in between in parts and pieces. So part of the requirement of the board at the time, I think it was like 12 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, was to reset the walls.
I believe, if I'm correct, that was all farmland back then.
Yeah, it was all wooded that when it was developed for homes, and they just reset the wall. They clear cut the front, remove the stumps, and then reset the wall with some conformity on the opposite side of the road where the gentleman resides.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Knight?
Yeah, I apologize, but do we have a drawing or a picture in our materials here?
There is one here, but that's the next one coming up.
That's why I
But
said-
a lot to
I
visit.
suggest
can't-
maybe we
I
throw it
can't-
up on
excuse me,
Google Maps.
Excuse me. My question is there something that I can look at to see what we're voting on? Because I don't understand what we're voting on. Trees, wall, I heard the testimony, but do we have something in our materials that I can see what we're doing?
Yes, yes.
Where is it?
It's attached to the next packet, the subdivision
Okay.
packet.
Is there a picture?
The actual subdivision plan is attached.
Can you direct me to, because I'm really uncomfortable voting on this if I can't see what we're doing.
So you have two Marjorie Palmer, one's
Yes.
thin, one's thicker.
Yeah.
The plan
Yeah, one's a scenic road we're doing, the next one's a subdivision.
He's looking for a picture.
No photographs, though.
This is it right here.
This is it? Okay.
Can we use the Google Maps, John, and have him go street
I
view?
don't know, can you do a Google map?
Do we have a photograph?
It just shows what they're up against. It's challenging.
Do we have a photograph of the area?
That's why you're supposed to drive down.
That'll show on the street view.
I drive that road every day, but that's why I'm looking for a photograph of what we're doing.
Because this gives you the grade here and the elevations.
That wasn't really a wall. This is a wall, too.
But we don't have a photograph of the area as it looks now and what they're proposing to do. Okay, that answers my question, thank you.
Well, he's looking to see if he can pull it up on Google.
I'm uncomfortable voting on
That's what I
something
do.
that I can't visualize.
You can go on the GIS
Okay.
at the town hall here, and you can see the property there, and you can go on Google.
I'm being asked to vote now, and I would like to see something now. I drive by there frequently, so I know what it looks like. I'd like to know what it is that's being proposed, so I know how to vote.
Well, if you know where the area is, he's just pulling it up.
Yeah.
You come in here, there's the
Thank you, Owen.
trail. You see the Rockingham Trail?
Yep.
And the property
further.
she's talking is gonna be over here
Yep.
on the left.
Further
Says
up.
Rockingham Road.
Yep.
Excuse me.
If you
Move this
put- if
picture
you put the
down.
address in, it'll go to it, and then you can drag the little yellow guy down. Yeah.
I can do that at home.
Yep.
No, too
Right-
far up.
Right in front of those houses.
Whoop.
Yep,
Right where that orange tree is, in the middle. Yep.
right there.
Just drag the little yellow guy, yeah. Thank you. Sorry. You know what you're doing better than I do.
Oh, he does have a little guy.
So there it is.
Oh, look at the wall.
Yeah. Yep.
What exactly is being done with the wall, just so I can visualize it, I'm
So,
sorry.
so the wall has to be removed back because the town has asked for an easement. I think I had said 15, it's actually 10 feet. It's 10 feet back if the
Why
wall's
did the
being
town
pushed.
say that it has to be moved back?
They want a little bit more width on the right-of-way, because this is a scenic road. I don't know what the exact width of Stark Road is, but they're looking for a little bit more room to be able to work within the right-of-way for future road improvements. And they're also looking for us to create a swale. If you look at the other side of the road, I think my office did that subdivision back about 10 years ago. They're looking at having a better drainage system along Stark Road.
That used to be all trees on the
So,
left-hand side.
so if he pans across the road, Mark, you're saying that's what, it'll look like what they did across the road is what you're saying the end result is going to look like, to Andy's point? I think that's what he was trying to understand. So across the road, they moved that wall back, and that's what we're seeing there? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
that-
nice. Because that,
Wood.
that was swiped all the way from Lawrence Street
Sorry,
all the way
woods.
down. All the trees were wiped out.
LMB or HB? Yeah, I remember that.
So we can expect it to look somewhat like this, you think, at the end?
A little more elevation, the driveways will go up to the homes. Yeah.
But the wall remains, it's just moved.
And to what extent is the foliage, or to what extent are the trees going to be removed?
So we got to go back the 10 feet in order to get the site distance. Beyond that, we can do more of a selective cut or something for the house lots. Obviously, you have to clear for lane clearing for home, septic system, and well.
Right. When you say a selective cut, I mean, can you give us just a rough percentage of how many of the
Only
trees
those
would
two
stay and how many would
subdivisions, right?
not stay?
I couldn't give you a number of how many could stay, but I think beyond the 10 feet, we can leave some trees if that's something the board's interested in. I think it's something that we could try and agree with. We need room to locate the house and stuff, but we're not looking to decimate the trees.
Now, I see the power lines are over on that side there. A lot of the upper tree levels, have they been wiped out?
Have they-
Because of Eversource?
The power lines?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what what they've done out there for maintenance and stuff.
I'm going to allow for that gentleman to ask that one more question, sir.
Got a cou-
Again, Bill Mason at 7 Stark Road. It's less a question than an observation because I live there. So there's these two lots, and you talk about moving the wall back, and then, but maybe not moving the rest of the wall back. But immediately south of these two lots is Miss Palmer's big garlic field. So that's her property there. So I don't understand why that wall couldn't be moved back. It's not somebody else's property, it's hers. And then that would have the wall be straighter all the way through.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, now that we have the picture, I have a follow-up question. I noticed that there are utility poles in the section of right-of-way that the town would like to have clear of the wall and create a swale. Are the utilities going to be asked to move their poles?
We're not talking about a deep swale. It's going to be a shallow swale because as soon as you clear, they're going to want to go down 3% per our driveway requirements off the road and then climb back up 5% and climb back up to the topography of the lot because it rises at a fairly constant slope going back away from the road.
Oh, Mr. Connors?
Well, I'm not
I
sure
don't
Mr. Nelson got a
foresee,
satisfactory answer.
I don't foresee utility poles having to be moved unless they're overexposed for some reason. But I didn't note anything that looked like was going to be overexposed from my observations in the field.
So just a quick follow-on, then I'll ask my question. Does the town even have the right to have Eversource move poles unless we have to prove something, or can we just say they got to move them?
Yeah, if we're doing a roadway improvement and it needs to be moved, we have to coordinate with them.
Okay. So just to make sure, I think the gentleman's question across the street and just understanding this, the scenic road that we have jurisdiction on, how far back do we actually have jurisdiction to say anything about a wall or a tree? Because let's face it, if they're moving the wall back 10 feet from the current location, it will be clear cut, at least that 10 feet is all going to be gone, and the wall will then be moved back 10 feet. If that is now 25 or 50 feet or whatever it is off the side of the road, our jurisdiction over the scenic road ends, and the property owner will be able to do whatever they want as far as cutting trees, I believe. So to the gentleman's point, there may be no trees at the end of this.
Rough calculation would be 350 feet.
300. That's how far back the scenic.
Just looking at the next subdivision and looking at it, to just take those two pieces of property. But I think he was saying.
No, I mean, how deep into
How
the
deep?
lot can we control what trees get cut? In other words, I don't think we have jurisdiction once this is 10
Hold on,
feet back.
George, you
So
answer that?
George is shaking his head no. So reality is, this could be clear cut if
think-
the owners decide to clear cut it.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, Mark's correct. You can't, once you go beyond the property line of the town, the right-of-way, we can't go on the private piece of property and tell people
And
they
the
can
right-of-way
or
is usually,
cannot
what,
cut the
8
trees.
feet?
What's that?
Right away is usually.
Well, traditionally, a new road is 50, Mark knows, 50 feet, 24 feet of pavement. This is an old road, so
It's-
Mark may know the right-of-way.
I think it is a 50-foot right-of-way, but the road, typically the right-of-way in these old roads is not centered, so one side may have 8 feet, the other side may have 16 feet.
My point's just being that if the homeowners, like across the street, want a nice grass lawn down to the road, that's what's going to end up here. We don't have any jurisdiction. When Andy was asking about, is there going to be trees still remaining? We're losing control as soon as we say they can cut the trees back and put the wall back. That the owners just need to realize it could look just like your side of the road with a rock wall in your front yard and all grass. That's is what I want everyone to understand.
Okay, what's the board's pleasure?
All right, Mr. Chairman, if there's no other comments from the board, I'm going to make a motion. I move to allow the cutting or removal of trees or tearing down or destruction of the portions of the existing stone wall to facilitate the two-lot subdivision proposed for parcel 03128, 14 Stock Road, owned by Marjorie A. Palmer Revocable Trust with the following conditions. 1, a scenic road public hearing is required for Eversource to relocate poles on the frontage pursuant to RSA 231:158, numerical number 2, if utilities are to be set. Number 2, pursuant to note 14, stones from the stone walls or portions thereof removed from the construction of slope, drainage, and utility easement shall be relocated and the stone wall reconstructed outside of the easement areas.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah,
Mr. Wilson, then I'll
Mr.
go
Chair,
to Mr. Connors.
I understand the concern of the abutters, but I also understand the requirement for site distance for safe vehicular travel from the driveway into the public street. And looking at the picture and seeing the dirt embankment on which the stone wall sits, I think we have no other choice but to grant the permission.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Connors?
So I just have a question of, maybe it's George or Mark. The gentleman raises an interesting point. If the owner of this property is asking us to do something special on a scenic road, in order to to benefit them financially, do we have the ability to require that owner to also move the wall back on her property adjacent, so it does continue contiguous versus looking like a multiple, level wall? And should we be doing that? I think unfortunately, it seems like we've given up on scenic roads in Derry and did that years ago. And, if we can get this wall to look nice, and these are nice homes, I have no doubt it will be. As to Mr. Nelson's point, I think that ship has sailed to some degree. The other side of the street, it's there. Not sure how we can do it for one and not another.
Clarification, you're saying you would like to have them extend removal of the trees, add the stone wall back 10 feet, all the way from where the two subdivision is, and go all the way down towards what Kilray.
Wherever the owner owns along that road, should the wall be kept contiguous, is my question, and can we require
Chairman,
that?
I just for the record, we can't do that. I hear what Mark is saying, but we're not allowed, you're only looking at these properties. I mean, Marge Palmer, the owner's here, but that's something you can't do as part of this. You only can look at the two lots.
We can't require it, but the owner could potentially do that in
In
order to
theory,
gain our favor in voting that
I
way,
mean, Marge
correct?
Palmer here is, Marge is here, Marge Palmer's here, but to answer your basic question, you can't do that on this tonight. That's what I'm saying. She's here, Marge, for the record, but
But if we voted no, the owner could come back and say, I'm willing to do that, and then we might see something different.
I don't want to speak for the owner, Mark. I
Okay,
mean,
just
put me
asking
in
the
an awkward
question.
position.
It was an interesting point brought up by the owner, because I think on the other side, you did end up with a contiguous wall, is what my point is, so.
He should be saying that.
Yeah, that's why I say it does, it looks nice, and as long as it doesn't look all jaunty and crazy,
I
why
think
not?
the difference in that case was that was about 6 or 7 lots that we did there. They had a lot of
Cost.
frontage.
It's cost.
Right.
It's cost. I understand that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, make one more editorial comment, and I understand what Mark's
Debate
saying.
after the motion.
Stock Road, the town, when I started here in 1984, Stock Road was a lot more scenic, similar to what we saw 2 weeks ago on English Range. The town, good or bad, back in the 80s and 90s, widened this road, paved it. When I started here, that was a dirt road with some oil, like the rocks on top of it, the crushed stone. So it's completely changed in 35 years, so, but by law, we still have to hold this public hearing, even though it's not what it used to be. English Range Road, parts of it are still scenic, based on what you saw it last week. So, just for the record, for the new members.
Okay, so no further discussion. We'll start with Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Venice?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Reluctantly, yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yeah, like I say, it's not a scenic road anymore. Unfortunately, I would, like I always say, if we can find some solution that also makes it look decent, if we can move some of that other wall, make it look contiguous versus just a jaunt, great. Thank you.
Mr. Mallaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
I'm really reluctant to vote on this at all because, I mean, I understand that it was a beautiful scenic road when you started, and I've been familiar with this town for
Always abstain.
30, 40 years. And I think de facto, we've abandoned the scenic road aspect of it. I was a little bit insulted when I asked for pictures and I was told to do my homework because I've appeared before boards like this here and elsewhere. And if I'm an applicant, the burden is on me to show what the plan is. And so if I ask for pictures and drawings, I think that I have every right to ask for those. And thank you, George, for showing them to me, but I'll abstain.
I'm going to vote yes. So the motion passes with one abstain. Yes, I voted yes. Losing my voice, sorry. So that motion passes.
That passed, just for the record, for Lisa, okay? And now
So
we go to
the
the actual
next
subdivision,
item on
so
there.
you,
Is again Marjorie Palmer,
yep.
Revocable Trust. Marjorie Palmer, the trustee, PID 03128, 14 Stock Road, acceptance, review of the two-lot subdivision. And basically, it's sort of, the one lot right now is about 4.23 acres and will be split.
Yeah, same thing for the record, Mr. Chairman. Marge Palmer Trust, Marjorie Palmer trustee, 14 Stock Road. Again, they're creating a two-lot subdivision in the low, medium-density residential district. That's a 2-acre minimum down in that zone, 150 feet of road frontage. All town departments have reviewed and signed the plan. There are no waiver requests. They have obtained their state subdivision approval number. We have a copy in the file. Again, staff would recommend approval of the application, and I'll turn it over to Shane Gendron for the record. And then you have to open the public hearing to hear from the abutters as well.
Okay, you want to explain?
Sure thing. For the record, my name is Shane Gendron. I'm employed with Herbert Associates, and I represent Marjorie Palmer Revocable Trust. Again, it's a 4.22 acre parcel. We're subdividing it into two 2.1 acre parcels. As previously stated, we've talked about the improvements that we're going to be doing along Stark Road. As part of that, we're giving a 10-foot wide slope easement and utility easement, maintenance easement to the town. Is really all about the plan. We've got the state subdivision approval. We show the driveway profiles, the proposed driveways and locations on the plans. We've met with TRC, police and fire, engineering. I think we've done everything. It's really all about the plan. It's pretty straightforward. The lots are pretty conventional in shape. They're not odd shaped or anything really. That's really all about it.
We have a motion to
Mr.
public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
take
to accept
jurisdiction.
jurisdiction.
Second.
I moved, I'll read it. please. Move to accept jurisdiction to the two-lot subdivision plan before the board for Marjorie A. Palmer, Revocable Trust, PID 0312814 Stock Road.
I still second.
Thank you. We have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to speak?
Nope, not yet.
We just
Oh,
accepted
that's right.
jurisdiction, and we now have to do
You're going to make that?
regional
Forgetting
impact.
about the regional
Mr.
impact.
Chairman, I would like to move pursuant to RSA 36:56 that the board finds the proposal as presented at this time meets the definition of a development of regional impact. And just remember, we always make those motions in the affirmative.
Seconds.
So we have a motion, we have a second. We're going to start with Randy with his famous answer.
No, I do not believe this small two-lot subdivision meets the definition of a regional impact.
Mr. Healy?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. Grenice?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. Nelson?
No regional impact.
Mr. Feinhauer?
No regional impact.
Mr. Connors?
Nope, squarely in the middle of Derry.
Mr. Malaby?
No, for the same reason, Mr. Chase.
Mr. Myers?
No, same reasons as Mr. Chase.
I'm going to follow along with the group and go with Mr. Chase's answer, and he answers no. So with that, we move on.
Now we do.
Now we do it.
Are you sure?
We have a motion to open the public hearing?
Ouch, tough crowd tonight.
Oh, I'll make, Mr. Chairman, I'd
can't
like
make
to
the
make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Public hearing is now open on this particular case. If you have anything you would like to say, please come forward, state your name and address, and we'll have questions. And seeing none. Anything?
Moved close.
Second.
Beat you to it.
We have a motion, that was Mr. Connors, and we have a second with Mr. Grenice. Going on there, Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Closed of the public hearing. So we have now the finding of facts.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. The board finds the proposed plan provides safe and efficient vehicular and pedestrian access, and the design and construction of the driveways are adequate to accommodate the anticipated volume of traffic proposed by the development. The board finds the stormwater management as proposed is designed to control the post-development runoff so that it does not exceed pre-development runoff.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further questions? Seeing none, Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Finding of facts has been accepted.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move pursuant to RSA 676:4, Roman 3, expedited review, to approve with the following conditions. Subject to the owner's signature, submit an 11 by 17, I assume that's inch, plot plan showing the new lots and addresses as assigned by the Fire Prevention Bureau and the new parcel ID numbers as assigned by the Assessing Department. Amend Note 11 to state, all new driveways are to have 12 inches of NHDOT 304.3 crushed gravel for the entire driveway. Subject to on-site inspection by the town's engineer, establish escrow for the setting of bounds or certify the bounds have been set, establish appropriate escrow is required to complete the project, obtain written approval from the planning director or designee that the GIS disk is received and is operable and it complies with LDCR section 170-24.c, subject to the receipt of applicable state or local permits relating to the project. Conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months, and submission of the appropriate recording fees payable to the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds, which includes the $25 LCHIP fee, recording fees for the Mylar, and notice of decision.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Mr. LaRue, is there anything you want to add to this?
Nope.
Okay. Seeing none, going with Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes, and I'll just ask, like I say, that the developer, if they can sweep the wall back out, if it's far enough away from the driveway, sight lines, just try and make it look good for the neighbors. You always do, I think, so.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
I agree with Mr. Connor's statement, but I'll vote yes.
And the chair votes yes also, so.
Thank you, folks, appreciate it.
And Mrs. Palmer, I just recently was over at Alvin, and I had an opportunity to go through.
Can't hear you, John.
Oh, I'll go see him. Give me a-
I think your mic's been off, John. You might want to check that, too. I think it might be being picked up on others, but,
It's on,
oh,
but,
it's just soft, okay.
so we're in a brief recess.
Going to commercial, I guess.
Chairman's prerogative.
Why don't you stand up and say, I'm in charge here?
Yeah, Dave, you keep it going.
All right. Let's see how long we chat. I don't want to be rude.
I'm in charge here.
Well, he should have said.
It's a coup. Take it over, Dave. There he comes. He's coming. He's coming.
And for the public, the reason why I stepped away is I want to say to Mrs. Palmer that recently at Elvin High School, they put an addition on. And the addition was named after Wilbur Palmer, because he was a teacher over there in agriculture. And anybody that ever goes by Hudson School again, look up on the weather vane on the top. There's a spider there, and it's a symbol of what he always had. And they did a great job building that facility for the kids. So,
Thanks.
oh, we finally get to Mr. Lannon.
Well, let's go.
So the next one is JAL LLC, PID 11058-008, 40 Danielle Road, the Denali Builders LLC, PID 11059-006, 30 Denell Road, PID 11059-007, 28 Denell Road, PID 11059-008, 26 Denell Road. It's an acceptance review of a lot line adjustment.
Yep, thank you. I'll make it quick, Mr. Chairman. I won't. As you said, the applicant's JAL LLC. One of the owners, Tom Lannon, is here, Denali Builders. Again, the address is 40, 30, 28, 26 Stanley Road. The purpose of the plan is for a lot line adjustment for the above referenced parcels. Town department signatures are not required for the lot line change. There is a waiver request from Promised Land Survey for the high-intensity soil survey. There are no state permits required. Again, this is an internal lot line change on Denali Estates on Daniel Road. Staff would recommend approval of both the lot line plan and the waiver request. And I'll turn it over to Tim Peliquin if there's any questions.
Okay.
Welcome, Mr. Pelican.
Thank you very much. Good evening. For the record, Tim Peliquin, Promised Land Survey. Good to see you all tonight. So this is, relatively a simple lot line adjustment. The lots get a little funky, I will call that, but these are the backs of the lots. Generally, we're holding the precise 2-acre minimum, and the reason, just to avoid the question that might come is, hey, why are you doing this? The reason is there's a phase 3 coming your way and a phase 4 coming eventually. You'll see that later part of this year, or actually this fall. And it involves road construction. It involves steering around large portions of ledge. It involves less blasting. So some of that this is driven primarily by road alignment and the most feasible way to construct the new roadway, which will service Forest Drive, but that's another discussion for another time. And it's also the betterment of this later when there's going to be additional roads where roads will interconnect. It'll be better for traffic flow, for fire departments, emergency vehicles, and other things when some roads are interconnected, and that will come. You'll see that this fall. So with that, all the lots are minimum acreages of 2 acres. I get a little extra money because we have to set some more pins in the back, but that's about it. So if there's any questions, I'll try to answer that the board might have, or perhaps members of the public as appropriate. Thank you.
You have a motion to accept the jurisdiction?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would move to accept jurisdiction of the lot line adjustment plan before the board for JAL LLC, PID 11058, 008, 40 Daniel Road, Denali Builders, LLC, PID 11059-006, 30 Daniel Road, PID 11059-007, 28 Daniel Road, and PID 11059-008, 26 Daniel Road.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any questions on it? Seeing none, Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhoff.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to speak on this category?
I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Seeing no questions, Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhoff.
Yes.
Mr.
Yep.
Connors. Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. The public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to speak, come forward, state your name and address.
This guy in the black shirt looks like he may want to speak.
Chairman, seeing no one online and no one
Russian?
except the town employees and the people looking to build rushing to the up front, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
So we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhofer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Public hearing is now closed. We have, what, one waiver? Actually, it's open to the board right now. Does anybody have questions for Mr. Pellegrin? Seeing none,
Mr. Chairman, quick question.
yes.
I see the waiver. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's,
It's a little,
you've given it to us on this subdivision before. We have not done high-intensity soils on this lot, and we asked for a waiver way back when, based on the fact that these are 2-acre lots, that we have town water already. There's septic systems. These will fully qualify by all state standards, well, double any state standards. So a high-intensity soils map is not really necessary, I guess I would say. So
But-
it's in the regulations, so we have to ask for it.
oh, so this is same as one before? 'Cause I remember,
Yes.
okay.
Yep,
Kind of thought that, but I just wanted clarity because
Yeah.
that was a little while ago.
sure.
Thanks.
Somebody needs to read it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion and grant waiver, move to grant waiver from LDCR Section 17024A Alpha 12J. John, His mapping as proposed lots to be serviced by municipal water, and as such, the loading requirements are diminished. After review of the waiver request, the board finds strict conformity to the regulations would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhofer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So the waiver's been granted. Now we have the finding of facts.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to find that the proposed plan does not alter existing conditions which would affect access to the lots, ensuring health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood remains unchanged as a result of the lot line adjustment.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any questions? Seeing none. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhofer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Finding the facts have been approved.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if there's no comments from the board and no other comments from the Public Works, I'd like to make some other motions. All right, approve to pursuant to RSA 676-4, numerical 3, expedited review of the following conditions, subject to the owner's signature, subject to the on-site inspection of town engineer, establish escrow for the setting of the bounds or clarify the bounds have been set, establish appropriate escrow is required to complete the project, note approved waivers on the plan, obtain written approval from the plan department designee that the GIS disk is received and is operable and complies with the LDCR section 170-24C Charlie. Conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months. Submission of the appropriate recording fees payable to the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds. This includes the $25 L-chip fee, recording fees for the Mylar, and notice of decision.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Seeing none. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes, what they're doing out there looks great so far. No doubt it's going to continue.
Mr. Malavey.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Good luck.
Thank
I
you
guess
so
we'll be
much for
seeing
your
you pretty
time.
soon again.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Yep.
Last item on the agenda is the Spofford Development. Owner, Watts Auto Salvage, PID 05038-001, 109 Rockingham Road, acceptance review of the mixed-use site plan, 23,300 square feet, commercial, 63 apartments, 9 townhouses. And George, you want to introduce the engineer and bring us up to date on this?
Just for the record, I'll I'll
Because
introduce
before we introduce him, because I want to say something also.
Yeah, I do want to do my quick staff report or just, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you do
Okay.
that?
Yeah, just for the record, and I know I've talked to several neighbors and have received some phone calls, but this project was here a year ago as a conceptual, which is required under the West Running Brook zoning district. And I just want to say, we've worked with the staff, the applicant has over the past year with fire, police, planning, public works, building, code enforcement, conservation commission. We think, and I know we'll hear from some of the abutters, because I know they have some questions for us. We think that overall, the quality of the project has improved from a year ago. They've reduced the overall density. When this started, prior to COVID, I think it was close to 90-something units. The total is now down to 72. We asked them to look at some of the landscaping, which they've addressed, and I think that's an improvement. You'll see that plan eventually up on the screen. The look of the building. So in general terms, they've addressed several of the comments that we had. There will not be an access out onto Bedard Ave. That was one of the things we did not want to see. Just for the record, for your packages and for the folks at home, we've had a traffic study done, a third-party consultant, which was hired by the town, and I'll let the engineer talk about that in a little more detail. We also had a fiscal analysis done for the school impact, and based on the numbers that they gave us, for the record, just for folks at home, the grand total will be 72 residential units. There'll be 3 studio apartments. These are all market rate apartments. There'll be 18 one-bedrooms, 42 two-bedrooms, and there'll be 9 townhouses in the rear, for a grand total of 72. Based on the school population and the numbers that was based on the school district's analysis, the total number of potential estimated school-age children would be 9, based on when you look at the breakup of the studio, 1 and 2 bedrooms. So based on that, they also have their New Hampshire DS alteration parade permit in terms of state permits, which is pending. We'll get a copy of that eventually. I think what we should do, Mr. Chairman, and you can speak to it, I think we'll hear from the abutters, because I know there are several here, and we'll take input. I know there's been some suggestion of maybe doing a site walk as well. In the big picture, staff would recommend approval, but we want to hear from the abutters and the public, obviously, and from the
Yeah,
board
we'll
members.
follow the regular format as we did.
Yeah,
the
you have a
jurisdiction
staff report for the format to open the public hearing. And I'll turn it over to Doug McGuire, who's representing the applicant, and Doug can get into the more details of the
Before
plan.
you start, sir, I'm going to say something. Just to let the board members know that there is a revision of an impact fee of the document that we'll be going through. So that should be in your packet, too.
Yep.
It says revised impact fee in the top right-hand corner. The other thing I wanted to bring up, this particular project started a few years ago. And back then, it's actually 4 board members that voted and listened to the conceptual concept at that time that are gone now. And so we have a lot of new members. But there's been a lot of conflicts on the social media that's been out there. So if any board member feels that they have a bias towards this here, it would be up to them to make their own decision to voluntarily step down and recuse themselves from that. So if, whether there be any new members or older members, that's, whatever your feelings are, that will give me an opportunity. So with that, introduce yourself, sir, and then let's go through the sheets.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Doug McGuire. I'm with the Dubay Group, and I'm here representing the applicant on this project. If it would be okay with the board, I'd like to hand out a hard copy of what I brought with me. I'd like to just do a quick overview to get everybody back up to speed as to where we left off, because it has been a couple years at this point, if that would be all right.
Those are just pictures you're talking about?
Just, yeah, is it all right if I?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept supplemental information as part of the package from the applicant at this time.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Haley?
Yes.
Mr. Venice?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Melleby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
More information, the better.
We'll have this on the screen too for the butters benefit, but just so
Thank
you
you.
have a hard copy.
Thank you, sir.
By the way, what's on the screen doesn't match the current plan.
Correct, and
That's why he's showing us
explain that.
the old plan.
Thank you.
I got the old plan, too.
These are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I was hoping to do, I think obviously had a as productive as possible conversation with the abutters while we were waiting to come up, and I think they're certainly more informed than they were originally, but I'd like to get this board up to speed as well if I could. So originally, just to remind everyone, we came forward in June of 2021 with a concept, and that's the concept on page 1, or that's on the screen right here. And, Owen, am I able to scroll, or is that you? Okay. Oh, okay, I'm good, yeah. Yeah, perfect, thank you. So this was the original conceptual plan. And just to remind the board, we had come with an estimate of approximately a 5,000 square foot restaurant on the first floor of the building with a additional 3 stories of residential above that. Behind the restaurant was going to be a parking garage area for the benefit of the residential units. And the reason we did that, mainly because anyone that's not familiar with this site, there's a significant amount of grade change that goes from one side of the property to the other that limits how it can be successfully developed. And so we thought this was a good alternative, because what you can see is there's a parking lot, say, on the back that comes up 1 full floor. So the parking garage area is built into the hill, making up that difference in grade. And then, as you can see, we originally had proposed townhouses, 9 townhouses. Our take on that was that it was going to be more transitional from multifamily garden style to then townhouses to then single family, and provide that transition. When we submitted that to this board in June of 2021, one of the comments was, well, we were proposing garage unders that were 3 stories high on those townhouses, and there was concern of height of both buildings essentially, and that was brought up as a concern during this process. And also, we shared some conceptual renderings of the building, and there was some feedback on the facade, breaking up the facade, maybe some color changes. And so we decided it was best, just based on that feedback, to come back with a revised conceptual plan. So we actually came back to you in July of '21 with this plan. And again, fairly similar plan, no changes to proposed density, but what we did do is we altered the townhouses to eliminate the garages and lower that by a full floor. And we also provided additional renderings, which I have copies of. If, we can get into that later. The renderings have not changed, but if I do have hard copies to remind you of what those buildings, and in addition to just regular elevation view renderings, I have some perspective renderings of different areas of the site and what that would look like. And I can share that later in the presentation. But essentially, at the end of the meeting in July of '21, we had requested that the board perform an informal poll vote, straw poll vote, with regards to the merits of the application, recognizing that, you know, it'd be a significant undertaking of engineering to move forward. And so we asked about the density, we asked about the architectural facade, if you were comfortable with the access of the townhomes only the townhomes, with access off of Bedard, and at that point you were. And that was kind of the general takeaway of that, and we moved forward. There was a lot of moving pieces with this project. That is why it took some time to get back before you. But as you noted, we have now made some fairly substantial changes to the plan. I just want to highlight those quickly, and then we can get into more specifics. So this is the current proposed plan that you have before you. And so I'll start with why this happened and what we did and how we got to that point. So the layout, although like at first glance probably looks very similar, you know, same shape buildings and whatnot, there's some pretty substantial differences, and that's with regarding elevation. So the main start of this was shifting the access on Rockingham Road from the far easterly side, closer to Bedard, to centering on the property, okay? So you can see that that's been relocated to a center point on the property. What that did is that made drastic grade changes because, for those who may or may not recall or be familiar, Rockingham Road has a fair amount of grade on it, dropping from east to west as you go across the page. There's an existing kind of ugly retaining wall out there right now, and that's the reason for it, because it was, the site had to be picked up to be level. Well, what we're doing is we're moving ourselves down that access. And so what that did is that reduced starting elevation from 322 elevation coming in on that right-hand side to 314. So we came down 6 feet just at the entrance alone. And obviously that carries through the rest of the development. To be more specific, the parking lot area that was in front of the, that's, you know, to support the restaurant, and that area went from elevation 329 to 321, 8 feet reduction. And so as you worked your way up, again, an 8-foot reduction on the upper parking lot. Now, those resulting reductions allowed us to eliminate entirely that front retaining wall that's in the front of the property right now. I think when we talked conceptually, we were going to be putting a new wall. It was going to be about a 10-foot retaining wall. Well, in reducing that 6 foot and allowing us to grade that area out differently, we were able to eliminate any retaining walls in that area. So there's no retaining walls along the front of the property. We also took the liberty of rotating the townhouses to not be their own separate area, really taking feedback from staff, taking feedback from board members concerned about elevation and height, and also our general consensus, which was confirmed in my little meeting there, that they would not, abutters would not prefer to have access onto their residential roadway. And so we eliminated the access on Bedard entirely, and we tucked up those townhouses and we added the garages back in so that we could build those into the slope. So this is where you start seeing a massive grade change. So the back of the townhouses previously had to have an 8-foot retaining wall from the back of the parking lot, and then the back of their units was at elevation 354. We dropped that down to 334. So a massive change. The front end, which is now the back end of those townhouses, was at elevation 363. We're now at 343. So it's a 20-foot reduction in height of those perceived townhouses, which we felt was very substantial. Obviously, this board had supported us with the revisions that we did to the townhouse, but an additional 20 feet of height reduction can't hurt. The other benefit that it does is it truly gives more of a natural buffer to the rear of the property where you're getting into the residential. We have pulled the townhouses because we've brought them into that parking lot area and tucked them up, utilizing the benefit of a garage under grade. The original building on the first concept in July was 60 feet from the property line. We're now 95 feet to the closest point on the property line. So, substantial increase in separation. We also entirely eliminated the parking lot, obviously, and the access to Bedard of those townhouses. So the benefit that gets us is there's approximately a 20-foot grade change that we're creating of a slope behind the townhouses. So essentially, natural grade, if you were standing on the existing property, is almost going to be looking over these units, let alone as you go back further into Bedard's development, there's significant changes in grade as they go back on Bedard. So it's really going to reduce the perceived visual impacts that we were originally contemplating with this new design. Significant improvement in that regard. You can also see a very heavy landscaped area behind the units and along Bedard that is fairly substantial. The last item that I guess is substantial that I'd like to talk about in generality is improvements to Rockingham Road. So the traffic study that we completed took a detailed look at not only the trips generated by our project and its effect on the surrounding area roadways, but also the existing conditions via traffic counts on Bedard, on Rockingham Road, and how those impacts and how our additional traffic would impact the area. And what we determined was, or not me, but the traffic engineer determined, was that there was an existing access problem on Bedard regardless of our project. There is enough traffic coming into Bedard of people going home, what have you, and enough opposing volume that without our project at all, it would really warrant a left turn lane into Bedard. So obviously, when we were contemplating our access onto Bedard, that was going to be a must because we were going to have access. We were going to be increasing the potential issues of that. But when we eliminated it, we still felt, talking with the Highway Safety Committee, per recommendations of the traffic engineer, it was still determined that improvements needed to be done at that regardless of our project because it's adjacent to our project. So we are proposing a roadway widening in this area to add a left turn pocket into Bedard Ave. It has its transitions that goes back towards the intersection, that not all the way, but it transitions back, and so it's a full left turn exclusive lane pocket. What we're also doing, because as I said, that left turn pocket doesn't provide any benefit to access to our property based on where we now have our driveway located. So what we're also proposing is to widen the corridor of our frontage to a 3-lane cross-section. And the benefit of that is to provide exclusive, well, not exclusive, I guess, it would be shared left turn access, as you would say, a shared left turn lane to benefit projects in between Bedard and Winter Hill. And, so because there's properties, commercial properties across from us. So if we have an exclusive left turn pocket into our property and they develop, they're going to say, well, what about us? How are we going to use, your pocket? So in circumstances like this, it makes sense to do a shared left turn lane, 3-lane cross section with additional widened shoulders. So that improvement is being proposed and be a condition of this potential approval. And that improvement is starting wherever the widening section of Bedard goes, then the 3-lane section will go all the way to Winter Hill to act as a de facto left turn pocket into Winter Hill as well. I have full plans of this. I can get into the nitty-gritty details of that, but that's the overview of what we're proposing for traffic improvements, which I think are substantial for this project. And we recognize that we are adding traffic, but we're also, I hope it's recognized that we're looking to mitigate those with these improvements, with these substantial improvements. So that's my general overview and history. I'm happy to now go into the merits of this specific plan quickly, or if there's questions at this stage, I can stop, whatever the pleasure of the board.
And generally, we don't ask questions till after we accept jurisdiction and then after the public hearing.
So would it be all right to continue with the plans?
To continue.
Oh, and can I see just the regular site plan?
No, that's the offsite.
That's the off-site. We can get into that one a little after. Great. So if you can just go to that first page, or we're past that one, if you just come down. So just for clarification, not to confuse anyone, the orientation of the plans has now changed. The only reason I did that, not to try to confuse you, but our original submissions had it flipped, so I wanted to show exactly what was submitted previously and then what is now proposed. So it's the same plan, it's just now that Rockingham Road is on the bottom of the sheet and Bedard is on the left-hand side, just for clarification. So this is the existing conditions plan, existing developed site. It's an existing junkyard, not in the best of shape. I'm sure most are aware of this. It's been somewhat cleaned up, at least of removing of cars in anticipation of a potential project moving forward. But you can see the grade changes. You can see that significant grade change in the back, and then even additional further grade change after you get past in there. So really just looking to work within that area and come up with something that is a form of viable development. You can keep going for me? Yep. We can go right past that. That's just soil analysis of the existing soils on site. And this one isn't very exciting either. This is just our site prep plan that's showing that we're going to be removing all existing pavement out on the road. That big wide open curb cut would all be eliminated. The retaining wall that I mentioned, the ugly retaining wall will be removed. And essentially kind of starting from scratch on the site. So here's our site plan. This site plan does meet, to the best of our knowledge, all of your requirements regarding parking calculations. We're proposing, you have pretty robust parking requirements. In my experience with other towns, you basically require 1.5 spaces per bedroom, but with a minimum of 2. So obviously what that means is that a 1-bedroom apartment is getting 2, and a 2-bedroom is getting 3, which I think adds for a fair amount of visitor parking. And that is reflected in here, the required amount of parking, in addition to the restaurant use, is all reflected in this. So we're not asking for any relief on that aspect. We have, I feel, good circulation through here. That was one of the main points that was discussed during the TRC. We have wide radii up at the top that can allow for accommodating a fire truck maneuver without having to back up through the parking lot areas. We created a loading area that you can see to the right of the garage access right there, so that, if there's deliveries for the restaurant use or anything like that, they won't be in the way of fire apparatus or other deliveries in an emergency. So that, that was done. We do have a widened section at our access out, which has a widened drive access of 14 feet coming in and 2 11-foot lanes, a left and right turn. I would note that just so you know, those were not required per the traffic study. There's not enough queuing anticipated based on the traffic study to warrant that. However, we felt that, and the fire department appreciated that if we add that extra section, it'll ensure that it won't happen, and there won't be any blocking of the intersection internally or otherwise. And it also gives a widened throat into the site, you know, because that's essentially a 3-lane section, a widened section of roadway. So we have dumpsters down at the lower level, dumpsters up at the upper level, fairly well-distributed parking, you know, garage under parking for the townhouses, as I mentioned, and spaces in front of the garage, additional visitor spacing up top. But you know, very similar to what was initially presented conceptually. The next sheet is the landscaping plan, and you'll see we have a fairly substantial buffer intentionally done along the residential use areas, and we're preserving existing vegetation on the right-hand side in many areas and supplementing that as well. You know, obviously internal street trees and everything, trying to just to make a nice-looking product. So the next sheet, you can go right past that. That's just the legend of all the plants and whatnot. This is our grading and drainage plan. And the revising of the grades did help us with this as well. We had initially had to have certain retaining walls and stuff when we were looking at this. We were able to eliminate all of that in that area, except for actually, I believe we may have just a small piece right where we added the loading dock area. But other than that, you know, everything was able to be eliminated. We have a treatment pond on that right-hand side that we can get all our drainage to, and we supplement with a little bit of infiltration, which is always a good thing, in the lower side of the bump out of the L. That area is still in fill, and so we could take advantage of some potential infiltration down in that area. All utilities come in off of Rockingham Road, which can be shown on the next sheet, the utility plan. So we have, you know, we're using connections to the existing sewer in the street, existing water connections. We have fire hydrants that we've added per the direction of the fire department. Both buildings on site will be fully sprinklered, fire suppression, and all of the requirements associated with the Derry Fire Department regulations. All those notes have been added on our plans. Electrical comes in again off of Rockingham Road, and you know, no impact to Bedard in that regard. And I guess I'll skip past those. Those are just our profiles. If there's any specific questions, we can get into that. We have our erosion control plans that just basically shows any steep slopes. We're going to make sure those are stabilized with matting and protected the best we can during construction. We anticipate access for construction to be off of Rockingham Road. It really wouldn't be conducive to come off of Bedard, as you can see from the cuts that we're now proposing based on the relocation, the revisions to the grading. The lighting plan is fairly straightforward. LED full cutoff fixtures. Full cutoff means obviously no horizontal throw above 90 degrees from light. So, and as I said, this whole project is now sitting significantly lower, so there shouldn't be any light pollution to the abutting neighbors, because a lot of this area is sitting much lower than Bedard and their properties, which are higher than Bedard in itself. We have our impervious area summaries clarifying that, talking about what we have, no wetland impacts proposed. We meet, you know, I think we have a good green space percentages, particularly with our adjustments to the townhouses and getting that large green space buffer. And after that, we just have construction details until we get to the end of the set, which we do have the building elevations, which I can just touch on briefly. So here you can see this is this is an elevation view of the proposed garden-style residential building. You can see there's a nice awning on that lower level where the restaurant is proposed, the residential above it, and then you can see on the left-hand side, that's access to, call it the second floor of the building from the rear side. So the perceived height from that rear side will be lower, only a 3-story building, and 4-story on the front. And so if you just scroll down a little bit for me, so that's the full 4 stories that you would potentially see. This doesn't look as pretty because it's not by any perspective angle. This is straight on, so this is looking at the face of the L. So that there is a lot of reveal there, and we do have some perspective views that we can share with the board and the abutters so they can kind of get a better feel for what that looks like. But this is just your requirements of elevation, standard elevations. This is just the other side. You can see that's the access to the garage, and then grade goes up and to the back. And then as you continue to go down, that's the 3-story backside of the rear parking lot and what would be perceived there. And here is the townhouses. So this is now your townhouses facing that parking lot, 3 stories with the garage under, built into the slope. You can see the slope stepping up on the side there. And then the rear is the much lower 2-story. But again, more importantly, just the overall reduction in height that we were able to achieve by pulling everything forward, which isn't really shown on this. So with that, that is the extent of my initial presentation. I can quickly go through those perspectives to show those, if you'd like. Or we can save those for...
Always save that to later.
Fair enough.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept jurisdiction. I move to accept jurisdiction of the mixed-use site plan before the board for Spofford Development, owner Watts Auto Salvage, PID 05038-001, 109 Rockingham Road.
Second.
Do we have a motion? We have a second. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Venese?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhoff?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We have jurisdiction.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move pursuant to RSA 36:56 that the board finds the proposal as presented at this time meets the definition of the development of regional impact.
Seconds.
We have a motion. We have a second. Mr. Chase?
I vote no. Although this is a larger plan than the first one, it still does not meet the definition of a regional impact.
Very good. Mr. Healy?
No regional impact.
Mr. Venese?
No, for the same reasons as my Mr. Chase and Mr. Haley.
Mr. Nelson?
No regional impact.
Mr. Feinauer?
No regional impact.
Mr. Connors?
Nope, no regional.
Mr. Malaby?
No, for the same reason, Mr. Chase.
Mr. Myers?
Yeah, this is a fairly localized project, so no, there's no regional impact.
I'll go along with Mr. Myers. I'll say no. So with that, we've got regional impact.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion to open public hearing, starting again with Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Ganese.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby. Public hearing is open. Anybody wishing to speak can come forward. Please state your name and your address. The engineer will take notes if there's questions and so forth. And then once the closing of the public hearing, then we'll ask him to come back up and respond to any questions that you may have.
Good evening, everyone. Tom Carden, 2 Cunningham Drive. I have a couple of questions on the agenda for the planning board here. It states that there are 23,300 square feet of commercial. It says on the agenda. And I look down here on sheet 5, and sheet 5 says there's a total of 5,300 commercial. So I was wondering what the discrepancy is between those two figures.
And the engineer will probably be working on it.
Oh, here he's right here.
So that's the non-residential space, Mr. Carden.
What's that?
It's the non-residential space. So that includes the parking garage and the 5,300 for the restaurant.
Okay, thank you. And then, you know, you're having a 5,300 square foot restaurant here, but, you know, I've been following these projects for a while, and it would seem to me that they're, you know, the spirit of the West Running Brook District was to have, you know, a mix of commercial and residential. And I just find it hard to look at this and see, you know, that one 5,300 square foot restaurant is really going to satisfy part of that West Running Brook District. I don't know if you guys have a figure, a ratio of commercial to residential, but it just doesn't quite seem to be enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, mister. Anybody else wishing to come forward? Anything? Nothing online.
Wow. All right, Mr. Chairman, seeing no one else coming up to speak.
Hold on.
Oh, now's your time to speak, so.
I wanted to go last, but.
You might be.
Chris Howe, 115 Rockingham Road. I guess there's just a couple things I wanted to share. I think last time in the preliminary hearing, whatever you call it, I had shared that I feel like the West Running Brook code is very subjective. You know, character, you know, could you make an argument that the aesthetic here has a character of a neighborhood? Maybe. But a 4-story structure that is probably one of the larger structures in Derry, is it fall within the character of the rest of the neighborhood? I find it hard to classify it in that way, but I think that I, for a long time, have thought that there is legal liability for Derry to not have quantifiable measures for what we consider that character to be. So I just raised that issue again. I'm trying to be as productive as possible. I think what's being proposed is the middle lane. I refer to it as a suicide lane. I think it's what we have on Crystal Ave. And I could see that there could be a lot of problems when people are coming home and traveling up Rockingham Road and wanting to turn on to Bedard, and during heavy traffic times, sitting in that suicide lane or getting into that suicide lane one direction. And I could see cars coming in wanting to get into this housing development, which is going to house 70-plus families, and at the same time trying to get into that suicide lane going the opposite direction. Not to mention what's going on the other side of the street with the storage facility and the auto place. So I feel like from a safety perspective, that raised a ton of concerns for me. I had a quick question about the abutting trees, I think on the Winter Hill side. I'm curious to know if that is done primarily to be able to achieve the drainage that you needed, and if a variance was required in order to be able to remove all of the trees that are on the Winter Hill side. That structure next to the Winter Hill folks is going to be a massive building. And losing those trees, yeah, I would be very, very frustrated if I was on that street side. I think that's all I wanted to share for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak before? Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, seeing no one else in the public like to speak in this matter, I'd like to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion to close the public hearing and a second. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Ganese.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we've closed the public hearing. Before we grant the waivers, why don't we ask him to answer a couple of the questions?
I think
We have
Mr. Connors.
discussion now, right? Or do we
Yeah.
have discussion and questions now for the board?
Well, I wanted him to respond back to
Oh,
to the
just to
question.
the abutters?
Then we're
Okay,
coming
thank
back
you.
to-
All right, fine.
Coming back to the
Yep,
board.
good.
I think there's only a couple of questions there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Could we pull up the off-site plan just so that we have a good visual of that? So you can stay right there. So this is, I mean, obviously this is the cover of the plan without all the detail, but this shows exactly what's being proposed here through the whole corridor. And so you can see we have and all of this is designed to DOT driveway standards or roadway standards, despite it being a town-maintained road. But you can see the left-hand pocket as it starts to widen out, coming towards the Bedard access. And you can see that we have that area, and then we have that exclusive left turn with the opened intersection at Bedard. And then you can see the widened section of the 3-lane section all the way down, all the way to Winter Hill. And there was some existing improvements proposed that were contemplated for another development that you had looked at, that this board had acted on, and we tied into their improvements. And so, I'll be honest, had they not also been, ahead of us in doing an improvement, we likely would have terminated the shared lane quicker after it was through our access, our frontage. We wouldn't have carried that all the way to Winter Hill. There wasn't a need necessarily from a traffic standpoint for that Winter Hill. However, recognizing that we didn't want to have an unsafe accordion effect where you're going in and out, we're taking responsibility of that and expanding that all the way to that other improvement that was already approved. So they were proposing they weren't proposing a left turn lane into Winter Hill. They were proposing just a left turn pocket into their driveway, and they just terminated back on the other side of Winter Hill. And we said, well, we're not going to terminate just to widen out again. So we widened that area, which I think is the right thing to do, and good design engineering practice. The only thing I just have to respectfully disagree. I don't think this is an unsafe situation. I think it's a significant improvement to the corridor in this area. You have good sight distance through there, even though you're dropping in grade, and it's a safe thing to be able to pull out of the lane of traffic. And somebody coming from Bedard or going onto Bedard can have an exclusive lane that they can safely wait in if there's opposing traffic. Same as our driveway, significant queuing in both. So I guess that's how I'd answer that question. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, that wasn't done specifically for treatment purposes or anything like that. It was to re-enhance the buffer. I don't know if we want to go back to the landscape plan of the site plans. It's the sheet right after the site plan. Oh, even this would work fine too, but you can see we do have proposed tree plantings all along that corner. Well, not on, that's Bedard, but then on the other side, we have the similar plantings there, and that's the drainage system that we're proposing, which is going to be allowed to naturalize and promote treatment. So that's all gonna, it will be maintained so that it obviously is still functioning, but it will be growing in. It's not like it's pavement there. So hopefully that satisfies that concern.
Okay, we're back to the board now. So, Mr. Connors.
Probably no surprise, I got a bunch of stuff, so I'll, feel free to.
Keep it down
Yeah.
for a little bit so other
Well,
people have a chance.
Yeah, no, that's what I say, feel free to, I can come back to myself after. Just one, a couple of quick questions I wanted to, maybe Mr. LaRue and I just want to make sure we're, first of all, looking at the plan correctly. Since I live in the neighborhood, what I call the pork chop lot or whatever that comes around you and goes down, there's that right of way coming down to Rockingham from the first house on Cabot Drive. They own that strip between you and Winter Hill. So it belongs to this house up here. And you kind of see it in the yellow here, that it's actually the first house on Winter Hill owns, it appears, that first piece along the road over to your property line. The town GIS actually shows your property owning half of it and them owning half of it. I just want to be very clear about the ownership and the property lines of this project. So do you know, is it half and half? Does the house at Winter Hill actually own that 10, 20-foot swath all the way over to your property line? Because you look at several different sources, there's several different property lines.
So, yeah, good question. I can tell you that the lines shown here are from your GIS system. So it's probably looking familiar and may not necessarily be 100% correct because our surveyor doesn't, survey every lot line that we show for context as such as this.
So our GIS actually shows it more in the middle, is what I'm saying, splitting that lot that you actually own a little bit of that. That's why I asked the question. So just want to make sure, if we can figure that out, it'd be good to know, make sure the property lines are in the right place.
Well, per our survey of the property, we recognize that entire swath, and I don't know what that little piece is right there, that is not showing. If you go to our existing conditions plan, that was, obviously certified by our surveyor.
Yeah.
That entire swath is part of that Bedard property, as you mentioned.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that there's real clarity there, because there's always been some confusion around that. My other question, and I want to first of all just give you some credit, because you guys have come back and done some stuff here, which I appreciate. So I'm just trying to make sure we're getting the best project for Derry here. I had brought up the fact in the packet we got, the remediation of any soil contaminations is covered, and the DES signed off on it. I did make a specific request in that first meeting, again, being a neighbor and having other neighbors here that know what took place on that property, in that large quantities of the dirt that was the actual junkyard had been removed by the owner, and over a month or two period, nightly, every, hundreds of bucket loads of dirt were taken off of there and brought up to the top of the hill where you're now building the townhomes. So most of the contaminated soil was moved to the top of the lot. And I asked about that in the first meeting as to where the test pits were, and the DES plan that you provided us shows that all 7 of the test wells were down in the lot. Not a single test well was done up here where all that contaminated soil was likely removed to. And where you're building townhomes on top of it now, I had asked, are you going to do some testing up there to see? And I think you got to go down 10 or 15 feet because of the amount of dirt. The response that you've provided us says that the testing here was down to 22 inches where it was done. And then the remediation report shows a picture of where they actually removed a bunch of soil, which is right where the building was, where it burned down, and where there was diesel spill. Nothing has been done, nothing has been tested up on that hill, and I have serious concerns that there's significant contamination still on that property because of that. I don't know what the liability is there for you as a builder or the person selling the property or whatever. I still strongly suggest that the town, I think Alan Cody got a lot of complaints when that dirt moving was going on. We know about this as a town too. So I don't know where the liability is, but I really think that testing needs to be done up on that hill at a significant depth, because I think it was all buried, and we need to make sure that there's not significant contamination there, because it could cause harm to the new owners and potentially people's wells that are in the neighborhood as you start to disturb things. So again, don't know where the liability lies, but there's soil up there that ought to be tested, and it hasn't been tested, so.
Now, you've known this for a couple of years. How come you didn't get over DES? Because we got a certificate.
We actually reached out to the town. I've reached out to the town. It's on record. George, I think, knows. Mr. Cody knows. There are calls by me, by numerous people. And in the notes from our conceptual plan, our own notes, I highlighted it. Several times I mentioned this in the first conceptual plan for them to go and test that. It hasn't been done. So it was on record for 2-3 years now by me.
And if I ask Mr. LaRue. Hello?
I think someone's
Mr.
phone.
LaRue? A question for Mr. LaRue. Isn't it when construction starts, if the construction person that's working the bucket or whatever, if they run into contamination soil, they are supposed to immediately stop and then notify either public health or visible?
How are they going to know?
And our own environmental gentleman, Greg, I think his name is? Greg. Durrett, he's inspected that whole area too?
I don't know to what extent that we've done tests for the town. All I know about is what DES has done.
Okay, thank you.
So again,
Anybody else have any questions?
I have a few more, but I'll wait for somebody else does.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, this is sort of a technical question on page 3 of the offsite improvement plan, there's a note that references the melding of the offsite improvements for your site plan and the Keystone site plan, and it says, shown improvements, blah, 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 are assumed to be completed prior to construction of this plan. Now, both plans are trying to move forward, both are in motion. I just want to ask you if, for some reason, your plan comes to completion first, does that cause any issues with coordination? In other words, if that assumption turns out to, for whatever reason, to not be true?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we tried to do when we put together the off-site plan was to take into consideration that possibility. We're kind of designing for the worst-case scenario, meaning that they're fully built and we have to tie into them. It's a lot easier for us to taper back to existing, and that would all have to be coordinated with Mr. LaRue and, and obviously he would have to sign off on any minor changes associated with that. But what we did is we assumed, well, they got a pretty good head start on us. They're likely going to be ahead in moving forward. And so we're going to make sure that our proposal works, seamlessly with theirs. And we had all their approved plans that we added in. If, for whatever reason, they decide to not move forward or whatever, what we would do is likely just safely taper back those transitions of that turn lane back prior to Winter Hill, and it would go back to just a 2-lane section in that area. So it would be fairly easy to transition, and then obviously if they then said, hey, we're back, well then the coin will be flipped. It would be on them to tie into our widened section, and I'm sure that would be coordinated with the town.
Yeah, I would just ask that the town staff keep an eye on this, and hopefully you will communicate and sync with the other developer, because we have 2 approved plans that show that they're going to splice together, and if one of them doesn't happen or changes, I'd like to see that come back before this board for a site plan amendment rather than just have the stuff fall off the map without us knowing.
Let me, before you answer that, George has got.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Just for the record, for the folks, to answer Dave's question, the engineers in the audience from the development across the street, so Jordan's here, Jordan Young on record, so he's well aware that this discussion came up, so Jordan is representing the developer across the street, so for the David, it's in the record.
Okay, thank you. I have just 2 questions before I turn it back to Mr. Connors. You talked about an under garage, and that's going to be below the building, and it'll be undercover. Are you thinking about doing anything with EV chargers, of putting them in there?
That's a great question. We're finding on a lot of the projects I've been working on, that is a component that is coming into play. It hadn't been discussed specifically, but I think if there was a need, and obviously the intent of this, this building is to be a higher end young professional type user, and those there may be a need for that, and actually it would be a good place for it to do it undercover. So.
And the thing that some other places are talking about is putting in conduit right now, and then feed the conduit later on. And
Yeah, I
then-
mean, I can certainly bring that forward to the developer and suggest that. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer to at least prepare for it, because
And the other
obviously we're going that direction.
The other question I have is, do you have HVAC, or how are you heating or cooling the buildings? Because I don't see anything on the roof as far as units go.
So we obviously don't have full architectural design plans done. The developer has been working with Market Square Architects, which did the rendering work and also the floor plans, and they had planned for that. I don't know if there's it may just not show on ours. There may be like a section that they're intending on blocking out, but that hadn't specifically been engineered to my knowledge at this point.
Okay, Mr. Connors.
So I guess just to follow, when you say blocking, you're thinking rooftop units, but the front makes it look like you don't see them? Is that what you're saying? Flat roof,
Yeah,
fake front type thing? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
At our school, they have a baluster.
Just when you said blocking out, I mean, or do you mean other spots on the property where there would be units physically at ground level?
Yeah, no,
didn't occur to
I-
me till John asked it, but that's a good question.
I would anticipate that it would be done within the roof system, whether it's in the pitched roof itself, or however they handle that, you know, as far as some of the apparatus stuff, but anything that can't be inside would be housed in that and designed into that roof system, and obviously have to be blocked aesthetically. I think your regulations require that anyway, but we hadn't gotten to the full design. Obviously, if and when this project moves forward, there would be full architectural plans that would have to go through the building permit process.
Just thinking where you are going to have townhomes on the backside, it's not as though you can just put a false front. It's going to have to look good from the back,
I
too.
agree.
So that's
Yeah.
they have to be set down in the middle of the roof. Okay, that wasn't one of my questions, but good one, John. George, this one might be for you. The impact fee that we have here that you mentioned, we got an update document from Liz today. So 1.75 million for Webster's Corner. That's the intersection at Clam Haven. The gentleman's talking about widening the road here, and they're putting in a turning lane. I assume that's not part of this. That's all on your dime, and then you are also responsible for $17,500 to go to the town because it's going to impact traffic up the street. Okay. That 1.75 million, though, is going to be covered by this and the development across the street, or Butterfield and all the developments? How does that, is there any taxpayer impact to this?
State has to be
No, sorry.
Just want to make sure.
No, there will not be. This is part of the impact fee, if you will, in that zone. So all the developers will contribute based on their percentage, and that's what Mike Fowler's saying.
Okay,
So as other developments come in, they'll pay. It won't be taxpayer money.
okay.
Follow
Plus,
up on that.
plus you have the state road.
Yeah.
Just because once you get to Clam Haven, that becomes a state
Right,
road.
right.
And they'll also kick in something there too.
So where I was going with that too, the width of the road there, they're adding a middle lane. Is that being done within what is already the town right away? Are there any property takings to any of the neighbors? Is this your property losing some frontage? How are you getting that lane in there? And then, in addition to that, what do the sides look like? Because you're asking for a waiver on sidewalks. There are going to be children here. They've got to get to school. I brought this up last time. Bike lanes are important to me as well. Are we right up against the edge of the road with a fog line, or do we have a bike lane of any sort when this is
I'll
done?
defer to Doug. Sorry, I can't tell if this is on.
So, good questions, obviously. What we did, and this was complicated, and that's one of the reasons why we're here in 2023 and not 2022, that this was a full elaborate, you can see it's a 21-page plan set just for the off-site improvements. So to directly answer your questions, number one, we are working fully within the right-of-way. So there's no land takings. Mr. LaRue, in review of the plan, noted some areas of concern in our initial design that you are exactly like you brought up. There's an existing residential home that has a retaining wall in its front yard, and he was concerned that, we made sure that everything was resolved before that. We ended up actually, kind of like what you just suggested, we're favoring a bit of our right-of-way on our property side to make sure that we're not impacting anything within that alignment. But we are fully working within, and we have a full DOT grade widening section, which is 5-foot paved shoulders, and then gravel beyond that of additional, I think it's 2 or 3 feet of gravel beyond the 5. And that's outside the fog line of the traveled lane. So, I mean, it's, DOT doesn't ask for any more than that, and
It's a
so
problem in the whole state. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Okay, just one thought, and again, I don't know if we're just voting this up or down tonight. One, the school study, I think it's pretty clear. We have to follow what the standards are. It's saying 9 kids. That's going to be what the impact is for this particular unit. They will need to get to school. We recently saved South Range School. The school is up in this neighborhood. You make an argument that you don't need a cross or a sidewalk along your property because it goes to nowhere. I might argue that a crosswalk from your entryway to Bedard at least does give those children safe access to then walk to their school through the neighborhood. because they can get to Bedard, then they can go up into the neighborhood. I don't know whether we bus kids from that close around. I know my kids, we live right behind this. They walked to school. So if we're not busing those kids, you ought to give them a safe, it's 100 feet of sidewalk there to get to Bedard. Might be something to consider going one way at least, so there's safe egress for those children.
Ask George a question before we finish. This was on the money that we were talking about, on the impact fee. How many years does that can stay in escrow?
6 years.
6. Okay, I just want to let everybody know it's 6 years. At the end of 6 years, if nothing gets done, it all gets dispersed back.
Okay. Question on the townhomes. The levels that you talked about, good on you. The question I have is the picture you showed us showed two living levels and a garage under. I might be mistaken, but I thought the packet that we got might have shown 3 living levels and a garage under. You're absolutely sure you're talking 2 living levels with a garage under? This is not a 4-story townhome situation. It's 3 levels total.
Absolutely. So, there's no lofted area proposed or anything like that. It's, you have your garage under on the front side. So, effectively, it will perceive to be 3 levels from the parking lot because you have a garage, your living level, and your second floor bedrooms. But from the back, you'll have a at-grade walk right out your living room to the ground.
Yep.
And then you'll have your bedrooms above that.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay. For some reason, I thought I saw something where there was a 3rd level
Yeah,
to
no
those
problem.
townhomes, so I might be mistaken, but.
I was going to ask,
Okay. Thanks, George. So I guess, to some degree, the roof line then of those townhomes, and based on the elevations that you're talking about, this front building still to me is going to be 50 feet tall with the roof line and everything. And I think the notes that I have from our first meeting made that the tallest building in Derry. I think George came back and measured things, and you said, the apartments over on the road to the dump, what's it called? Those are our tallest now. This is going to be 12 to 15 feet taller than the tallest set of buildings we have in town. So my discussion then was, I would really love to see losing a level off of that building too. I think I brought that up. I still feel like that might be more appropriate too. I'm just curious, the townhomes then, where you've brought them down, you've got a 50 feet in front of them, do they see anything but the back of that building anymore or not?
Do the townhomes see anything
Yeah,
besides
like looking out, I think before they were high enough where they were kind of looking, they were going to be way up there and they were going to see out over the top of the building. I'm just wondering we don't have anything that kind of shows us. I would love a visual when you guys come to, what does it look like,
I got it for you.
You do? Okay. Yep. All right, cool. If we could see that when you're ready. I just was curious about that. And again, the concept of the 5,000 square feet versus the 3,000 square feet, and this might be one for George and Mark and Liz. That parking is for the apartments. It's not commercial space. And I guess we never count parking for residential as part of commercial space. So is that an accurate representation of the square footage, or is it truly just 5,000 square feet, as Mr. Carden said, that's really commercial space?
So it is. So it's the I put the non-residential space, but it is 5,300 commercial.
Correct. And I think when we weren't necessarily thinking parking counted as commercial when we were talking West Running. But I just want to be very clear about that. That number bothered me too, that it seemed like it was a little bit of fudging, to make it look like it was more commercial. It's parking for the apartments. The restaurant is separate. Saying that, again, don't know where we are in this plan. The mixed use was the idea behind West Running Brook, and I was pretty adamant about that when you first came in front of us and all this. I have a little bit of a concern about the restaurant now, if that's the only commercial in this space. You've got a seating area outside that's going to be right below or next to apartment buildings. Restaurants typically have night, stuff. If you were to not have to do the restaurant in this plan, if those 5,000 square feet were available for residential only, so in this case, because of the uniqueness of the lot, we did not require that mixed-use component, would that allow you to drop a level off the main building to make this shorter? If the board was to say, you don't need to put the commercial, we're going to allow you to do just residential on this, is that preferable for you, and would that help you to make this shorter?
So I guess I don't believe so. the, obviously you have a longer section of
Parking.
of apartments, being the long section of the access. So I think you'd probably lose a fairly substantial amount of the residential units, which, I mean, I don't know, not to beat a drum that many have heard, but I mean, construction costs is astronomically high these days, and, to make something viable like this is just, there's a certain pro forma number, and even these numbers are tight, being just based on the way the market is right now. And these are the graphics that I brought with me. I have hard copies if you want to see something not on your screen. I'm glad we're able to quickly show them, because the architect would probably be very upset with me if he went through the effort and it didn't get to be seen. But this is the front of the building. You can see the restaurant space. I think they did a really nice job with the architecturals. That's just my personal opinion. Everybody has different thoughts. But that's what it's going to be looking like from Rockingham Road. And then as you come, that's what it looks like from the back. So to answer your question, are you going to be seeing over this building from the townhouses? No, you're not.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, ultimately, obviously, any resident is going to be aware of that when they come in. It's not going to be a surprise. And I think it's a better trade-off to bring these down for the benefit of the existing residents of Bedard, rather than, give these guys nice views from the townhouses.
Yeah.
If you keep going for me, Owen, so this is the townhouses. I think, again, I think they did a nice job with this. I think it breaks it up. And then I think the most powerful image is maybe this one. This is coming from the back side, so you got the grassed area. What this doesn't show is that you have right where basically the cameraman is, you're going up at a grade at, 20 feet. So the ground is way back behind this. So, I mean, the benefit to it is that you get nice privacy in these units, despite being in a more higher density residential development, but you get nice privacy in these units. And you can see, I think there's one more where it just kind of looks from the other side. Kind of gives you a perception of, grade-wise where you're at, and then just, again, recognize that you're going even further up behind it. So, and Mr. Connors, I know that you were more vocal at the initial conceptual hearings, and, I mean, I appreciate you acknowledging that we tried to make changes, but those were pretty specific to your comments, I'll be honest with you.
Absolutely.
So, we knew that of any concerns that the board raised, there were some on what the visual impacts would be and the perception of that. And I think we did a nice job camouflaging the height of this building based on the development and based on the type of the land, and truly working with the land. It's not going to seem like the biggest building or the highest building or whatever if that's the case. I think it works well on the site. So.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to bring Mr. LaRue in on this. Is there anything that you would like to say regarding this?
Nope, we've had countless meetings, correspondence through email, juggling a lot of technical information regarding the widening of the road, and we've come pretty much to this point and come up with the best
we're not going to vote on this tonight,
options.
because I want everybody to think, because there's a motion going to be coming forward to do a site walk, if I believe. So, go ahead.
I'd like to clarify something. I'll put it to George, because he said you did the measurements. In what way are you saying this is the biggest building in Derry?
No, I never said that's what I said, and I didn't say that.
Okay.
Tallest.
Huh?
Tallest, right?
No.
Well, the notes we have from the conceptual meeting actually stated.
Mark, you'd asked me Kendall Pond down in that area was the assisted living congregate care, remember?
This says, Mr. Cioris advised Bunker Estates, which is depicted on sheet 4 of the plan set, is the tallest residential building in Derry. This building will be 4 stories, which will be about 12 to 15 feet tall.
Yeah, that's Bunker, yeah, that's what I meant.
So,
Yeah, the first concept.
it's nowhere near the tallest building in Derry. Nutfield Heights is 5 stories.
What is it?
5.
Okay,
The low building at Pinkerton is 4.
tallest residential.
I understand that, but you're saying the tallest building in Derry.
High
and
school
it's not.
residential.
The Fairways has multiple 4-story buildings in it.
But Mr. Cioris goes on to say that
I'm just trying to
he
clarify-
measured it, and he includes the fairways and said they're not as tall.
So I'm just trying to clarify that this is not going to be the tallest building in Derry. There are multiple buildings in Derry
Is
existing
it the tallest
that are tall.
residential building?
So
I just-
residential.
Okay, thank you.
The Fairways does have 4-story buildings in it.
Okay.
Many of them.
That's fine. So I guess one last point, if I might, George, before we wrap this up. One of the requirements of, and I assume the builder is aware of this, but I know some people have pleaded ignorance of some of our West Running Brook stuff. Our West Running Brook requirement says that the commercial space must be occupied before the residential space in some formula. In the notes, this states they have no restaurant, they don't really know what's going in there. And again, that was also part of my, again, trying to figure out what's best for the builder, the developer, the neighborhood. You know, if they can't get a restaurant, they can't occupy their residential building or portion of it. And I want to make sure that they're aware of that, and we're going to stick to our guns on that. Or, again, do we want to look at this again and say, in this particular lot, to Liz's point in her comments in our first meeting was to say, look, we built West Running Brook so that we look at each lot and we figure out what the right mix and the best solution for Derry is. Should we be thinking about this? And again, I don't know what the abutters feel about it. Haven't talked to any of them, although some people think I have. Would stripping that commercial component out allow them to have less parking needed, which would allow them to perhaps have less apartments and perhaps make this just a little bit better for the neighborhood? But they do need to have that occupancy before they're going to be able to occupy the
Casey, you wanna make a
residence.
motion?
Yeah, I just want to, for the, I'll just read we have, you know, once the board votes on this at the next meeting, we have our staff recommendations for the conditions of approval. One will answer your question, Mark, just for the record. We're recommending that you add a note to the plan stating that the applicant will not phase the project and the non-residential portion of the project will be occupied on or before the residential portions of the project. And so that covers the concern that you had, Mark.
I just want to make sure the developer is aware of it.
Can
We can have
can
that
I
as the
just-
next amendment added to the
Can I
next
just ask, I
conditional.
just need a clarification on that, just so I can advise my client. So I'm trying to understand, so if, I mean, if they're building all this space, and let's say they're going as, I mean, we're not just shelling it and it's like not even drywalled in there or something, but are you saying that, I mean, because how can we ensure that someone physically is operating without, I mean, if they build a multi-story building and it's all being constructed at the same time, and they have residential units done, and they have a restaurant space done, and they're advertising for a user to come in, are you saying that they can't occupy the building
Can I answer
at that point?
I think what the intent would be for this development, it wouldn't be, let's build the townhouses and occupy them before we build the commercial structure in the front with the residences. So for this particular project, if you build the front building first, that satisfies that condition. So for other developments in the district where there's commercial building, residential, commercial building, residential, we don't want residential constructed and not the commercial. That's what that means.
That's how I understood it, but I just want to make sure for the record that that's clear, because that's not what Mr. Connors said.
So, yeah, so the front building first.
I don't believe that's true based on what we discussed and what the way the requirement is written is because, and I think Mr. Chase and a couple of people brought it up, we specifically did not want buildings, because we talked about these being first floor commercial and apartments over was what we were originally talking about, like at the Grand View or whatever you want to call it now. And the discussion, if you go back and look at the notes and listen to the tapes, was we don't want people just building that and leaving those empty, because that's not the spirit of the West Running Brook District. So I would disagree that it says occupied. It does not say built. So again, we left this a little loose to Mr. Howe's point. If the board wants to waive it, I guess, for this particular development, we probably can, because we can do whatever the heck we want, I guess, in the West Running Brook District. But again, there was an intent with the West Running Brook District, and that's all I'm trying to bring up. I like, quite honestly, the overall concept of what you've done here. I give you kudos. The junkyard needs to go. We know there was development coming. I think there's still a little tweaking here, and if that front building can come down a little bit, maybe get rid of the restaurant if it makes sense from you guys' perspective too, and the town is okay with it. There might be a win-win here somewhere, guys.
Okay, I think you've had enough on that. So I'm going to ask George and Liz for the next meeting, just to re-clarify that.
I'm good. I think Sorry, I'm good. I want to, just for the record, commend them as well. They've done an excellent job in working with the staff and talking to some of the neighbors on the phone. So I think one of the members is going to recommend a site walk. So if we do that, the next meeting will be 2 weeks from tonight, August 2nd. The abutters don't get notified again because the public hearing's been closed, but my suggestion would be probably the safest, given the amount of people, we would probably want to go to the top of the hill, up
And
just
look down.
before Cabot Drive, and walk or park there, and we can look down if you follow that versus going along Rockingham Road. Remember when we did the one last summer?
Park in my driveway.
Yeah, we can park at Mark's house.
You can hold on, Mr. Nelson's got a... Go ahead, Dave.
So, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the phasing, I have found it's on page 84, item G, and it relates occupancy of the residential portions to completion of the non-residential portions. Doesn't use the word occupancy in both.
Interesting.
And, Mr. Chair, could I just add one question?
Yes.
So, I mean, again, happy to do whatever the board's comfortable with. However, I mean, I felt that, I benefited from being last on the agenda. I felt a good conversation with many of the abutters. I mean, no, there was no abutter comment besides one gentleman. Do we need a site walk? I guess because, I mean, there was no real concerns raised by the board members, and there was no concerns raised by
On
the
the original
abutter.
conceptual, yes. In the notes, there is discussion, and in the TRC notes, it also listed and brought up that, talking about the board's going to want to see a site walk.
I think, all I'm asking is that I think the assumption was that it might be appropriate, but if we were able to address concerns of abutters and address concerns of board members, all I'm saying is, I mean, it's an open site, it's a junkyard, it's not pretty. I don't know what we're gonna gain from a site walk, honestly, if there were specific items that the board members were looking to see. I just don't know what we're gonna gain from that, and just not looking, it's the, excuse me, it's the summer. I'm sure everybody's busy, and just
Well, if we go into the,
wondering if-
we'll go into the fall then.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to schedule a site walk for this plan. I've been on the board for a long time. We've always done site walks for plans like this. I've had 4 or 5 phone calls from the neighbors, being a counselor at large, regarding some issues with this. They couldn't make it tonight. With regard to the waivers, I'm being on this board for a long, long time. I'm also not comfortable even discussing a few of the waivers. The first one and the second one. So I'm going to make a motion that we schedule a site walk regarding this.
What was the motion, I'm sorry?
Schedule a site walk.
Okay. Looking at a calendar,
So we need a second, and we need a vote.
do we have a second for a site walk?
Second.
We have a second? Okay, so,
So
go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
given the fact that there's going to be significant changes in the grade between the existing conditions and the final development, I'm also not sure exactly what we plan to see. I mean, we have the right to have a site walk, and if we're going to learn something, we should absolutely do it. But given the changes in the property, I'm not sure what we're going to look for. So can someone help me?
Mr. Chair?
Well, that's why we have a vote.
I was just going to comment, I think with the, I've said this about several of our site walks, the one across the street, we went and stood in the woods, you really couldn't tell anything. With today's technology, Google Maps, GIS, and these site plans being as detailed as they are, I don't see a value in a site walk for this one either, and I'm probably the one person you guys all thought wanted the site walk, but, if you do your homework online and stuff, you can see what this is going to be, so. I think the neighbors all probably have done their homework too, and don't know what happened in that back room, but yeah, evidently you answered a lot of questions.
We were talking for quite some time. There was a lot of questions.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Chase?
No, at this time, I'm well familiar with the site, and I would get no value out of a site walk there at all.
Mr. Healy?
No.
Mr. Ganese?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
No.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr.
No,
Connors?
at this point, I don't see any value in it, quite honestly. I know the property well.
Mr. Malaby?
No sidewalk.
Mr.
Myers.
No, for the same reasons that Mr. Connors and Mr. Chase have mentioned. I don't really see a value in going there. We all drive by there. It's a high visibility lot, and the drawings are very thorough. We've been given a lot of plans. So I don't see any value in a site walk, no.
Oh, yes, so what was the count? I forgot to write it down.
So 1, 2, 3, 4,
Count was
5,
two yes, the rest no.
2 yes, 6 no.
Okay, so the site walk doesn't pass. So what's the board's preference? To continue on?
Yeah, I apologize, this is off. Yeah, I mean, just going through, you had the public hearing, so you start with the waivers.
Right.
And just follow the staff report.
Just Doug need to.
Doug, do you want to give us a brief overview on the waivers? Because that way we'll have it, your explanation on the record, please. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Sears, can I just ask a question, I guess, or to the developer or whatever? You know, like I said, would there be any requirement, can the town do anything about the question I asked about the potential of contaminated soil not being dealt with, or is that not our purview at this point?
What's that? You could add that as a condition. I talked to Craig Durrett, our environmental engineer from Public Works on this, and he's the one that provided the staff reports. Again, DS, Cheryl Brown, the DS person signed up. You could make that as a condition of approval if you want to add that.
Yeah, I think
I'm not sure, like Liz
pretty
and I
clear they
said-
didn't look there, though, is my point. So they based their report on the sample wells and the information they were given, and Mr. Crete himself was allowed to actually do the remediation, which I found shocking, too, so.
I guess what, I will defer to Craig only because I had this lengthy discussion with Craig yesterday. He is an environmental engineer by training. He worked on the Big Dig in Boston. He's worked on brownfield sites, EPA sites. His opinion was that that's really, the state came back with their decision and signed off on this. His suggestion would be that the owner is the one that will be, the new owner will be responsible. I don't disagree with you, Mark. If they dig something and find something, it's on the new applicant or owner to clean that site up.
And if nobody bothers to look, and then someone starts getting sick later, who's responsible?
I don't disagree. I'm
think
just
the town might be a little bit. That's what I worry about.
I don't disagree, but the state makes that final say, and we have to defer to DES.
I'm just saying, we as a board are going to vote on something where we know there's potential contamination that nobody has uncovered. Okay. We're not?
I've never driven by there and said I saw dirt being moved. You're saying the board?
Your town employees know, and the state and the town went after the owner repeatedly for ignoring, got no fill permits, did nothing by the law. George knows this, everybody in town knows it. They were told to get off the property, it continued. So, again,
Is that
I don't
correct,
care.
Judge?
I don't care. I'm just saying, someone's gonna be liable in the long
Well, you
run.
should care. I mean, if we know it deserves to be addressed if the town is aware of it, and it's been on notice since this first started. And it seems to me that it just got glanced over tonight, and we moved on to the next topic.
We have a letter from the state.
Yeah, but if the state didn't dig there,
We gotta
to
ask
his
the town
point.
employees then, because
If I can suggest, if it's a big enough concern for the board, it can be made a condition of approval that the applicant
Further
have
testing.
tests done
Okay.
in that area.
Okay.
And I believe that would address the concern without
how would you
furthering.
call that area? What location would that be?
It's basically where the logging trucks and things are parked. It's the top part of the hill.
Top of the hill?
George and Alan know exactly
No,
where all the dirt was put.
I would be specific in the condition.
Well, if I got to go out there and measure it myself, I think this is more something the town should do. You guys know where it was put, George. If you could send Alan out there and give us precise measurements of where we want those test pits, you guys know where that dirt went. You got enough complaints about it, so. I would suggest that protection of, because, I don't know how I'm going to vote on the final plan. I hope some of what I just said maybe gets incorporated, maybe it won't, maybe it's just, talking. But this is now on record. And I won't feel comfortable voting just a blank yes, knowing that there is potential contamination. So that's
You're
where I
saying
stand.
One of the key people, Alan Cody, has knowledge of that.
I believe, yes, and I believe he'll state that on the record. I mean, he was, I'm not going to get into all the details. George, and everybody knows the details who needs to know it. Let's just make sure we check it, that's all.
I don't think the people on the board all know it.
Okay, well.
We're just hearing it now.
Well, they're not just hearing it now because I brought it up in the conceptual hearing, John. It's in the record already. 2 years ago, nobody did anything, but I thought they were going to go back and test there to make sure. Nobody did.
So Liz, you're writing up a condition?
Yes.
Yeah, we can put that as a condition of the approval. If Doug can give us a quick
Sure.
I got a question, George. Who's going to pay for this testing? Because the VOC testings, the volatile organic compounds, it's not cheap.
It's not going to be the town. It's going to be on the applicant as a condition. They have to go out and
So it's going to be
do the work.
the owner of the site, or?
Yeah, similar to what they did now. The owners had to go do the remediation, pay for the environmental and study that Jermaine did and Exeter Environmental did. So it would be on the owner and the applicant's response. The town, no offense, I understand what Mark's saying. We don't do that. It's not the town's responsibility. I hear what he's saying, but it's going to be on the applicant to go and do further review of that. So, and you can put that as a condition of your approval.
Can you ask Greg, if somebody's going to do soil testing that could be environmental, does DES have to be notified?
Yeah, yes.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, they monitor. So yeah, if they go out and do additional tests, which they could, the company will go out and they have to notify the DES at the state, and the state will again do their review, and like Cheryl Brown did, and she writes an okay from the state.
I actually tried to call Cheryl because what I wanted to ask was that decision from DES, they looked at paperwork and they okayed it based on the paperwork, the remediation work that was done, and the two engineers, I forget, the husband-wife team that signed off on that report, but the only data they looked at was down in the pit. They never got any samples from up top.
We get it. We'll put that in the condition of approval.
So, Mr. Chair, and that all makes sense to me, just not that, I don't know
gotta
if
take
anyone's
us
looking
through-
for my input, but that makes
They're
sense to
going
me.
to take us through the waivers, right?
Yes, sir. So we have 4 waivers that we're requesting. I think that all are reasonable, especially with the complexity that is the West Running Brook District. I'll just go through those quickly and happy to answer any questions on any of these items. So the first waiver that we're requesting is to not require sidewalk along the roadway frontage of the new development. As many are aware, there's no existing sidewalks anywhere in the vicinity of the proposed site, and it's never good practice to do sidewalk to nowhere. As we talked about during my presentation, we do have 5-foot shoulders in addition to the 3-lane section. So, we're not, I guess what I'm saying is the 5-foot shoulder should be adequate because people aren't trying to bypass somebody trying to make a left turn. Those people are out of the traffic flow. So you have an exclusive shared lane that people looking to turn can be turning. You have another exclusive lane that people looking to drive straight can drive straight, and then you have a 5-foot shoulder. So for that reason, we feel it's adequate, and that's why we're requesting a waiver of that item. We're also requesting a waiver to not require at least 2 points of entry, access, and egress from the site. Again, as we've talked about in detail during the presentation, getting 2 points of access to this site would require a connection to Bedard. It would require a significant grade change of the development, similar to what we had proposed conceptually, and actually may even have to warrant a little bit higher than that, because if you're going to have a connection between the lower sections and upper sections to get yourself out of there, it would be a substantial change to the plan. This, I can wait. Yeah. So this item, and I'm sure you can get staff feedback on this, but this was a question that was thoroughly discussed with staff, including the fire department, and that's why we did some of the improvements that we did, the widened access entrance, the widened circulation internally to allow for the turnaround without backup maneuvers of the large vehicles, a loading area to pull yourself out of the travel path so there'd be no blocking for emergency vehicles if there's a loading or unloading happening. So we did do design changes to accommodate that and to try to justify the merits of that waiver. So, and then the third waiver we're requesting is basically the same as the second. It's kind of the same thing. It says that you can't use cul-de-sac access for the proposed townhomes we're not proposing any cul-de-sacs, but loosely interpreted, there is a parking lot of which you can turn around in, so it could be, I guess, perceived as a cul-de-sac. So for that reason, just to cover that base and not leave any, uncertainty, we're requesting that waiver as well for the same reasons that we talked about in the waiver for the second point of access. And then the last waiver is your regulations don't allow technically for any studio apartments. We're only proposing 3 out of the 72 units. We thought that there is benefit, and obviously you wouldn't want to have half your development be that, but there is benefit in having some of that based on the pro forma numbers that the developer is running, and so he's requesting to be allowed to use, or to be permitted to have those 3 studio apartments. And those are the 4 waivers requested. Happy to answer any more detailed questions if you have any.
Okay, before I want to make an announcement. Typically, I would do that at 9:30, but our new policy states that at 9:30, we let everybody know the clock is ticking, and we stop, no matter where we are, at 10 o'clock, and that's it.
All right. Who's got questions on those waivers?
So, yeah, just real quick, again, on number 1, don't necessarily disagree with you for a sidewalk all along the front of it, but some sort of access for children to access Bedard and get to school if you're going to have 9 or 10 of them in the buildings seems to me reasonable. Mr. Chair, my other one is more for this architectural design regulations where we're going to move to find that the applicant demonstrates substantial compliance with the architectural design regulations. And a lot of that was, the look and feel of the building and that sort of. Now, we have some just general renderings up here, but you're stating this is not necessarily 100% architecturally designed. And I would also argue that red, white, and blue, while very patriotic, is probably not what the neighbors want to see as far as their color scheme. So I don't know if the color scheme's set on. So I just was curious, how do we find that without true architectural renderings? Maybe Mr. Nelson knows.
Well, I can try to answer that question first. The architectural design regs were intended to provide a palette of tools and some guidelines and ask the developer to express how all of those guidelines and requirements are being met. We never said we're going to have a town-approved color palette. It was never that strict. So the board has some discretion in saying, we think that it meets the intent of the regulations, or we don't because A, B, or C.
Okay.
I also have a comment. Your waivers reference LDCR sections. That's inappropriate because it's actually the zoning ordinance.
That's my fault.
That chapter 165 is the zoning ordinance, 170 is the LDCRs.
That's on me. That's my fault.
She made a mistake.
That was me.
So when we
Scrivener's error.
get to it, we just.
Yeah, just change that to zoning ordinance. It's habit, sorry.
I think mine says that, right? I can
But
just,
it's probably habit, because we
they're
always
wrong.
do it from the
Oh, no problem.
LDCR.
Yeah.
It's okay.
these sections are related to the
Zoning,
zoning.
yeah.
Correct.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I have one question on the last waiver. What's the square footage of these studios?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have the specifics on that, just because I didn't bring the floor plans with me, but they were designed as studios. And for clarification on the notation on, the architect did do full floor plans. I mean, they didn't do their mechanicals and all that, but they did. These buildings are very much based on reality, and they are a fair representation as to what we're proposing. If the color palette changes slightly, I thought, they had a more of a beigey browns and everything that came originally back in June of '21. That kind of met some, we don't really like that. So then they came in with this, and there wasn't really any negative feedback. So I think that's why we stayed with it. But, and so I apologize. I don't know the exact dimension or the exact square footage of the.
We do have a requirement in town, though, don't we, Randy? Is that why you're asking?
Yeah.
We do have a minimum for studios, right?
We would be comfortable holding to that minimum.
Beth Donovan, she kind of said maybe an average of.
750?
Yeah, I would say probably that would be on the.
It'd be like an ADU.
Did we set our minimum at 800, though? I thought I'm remembering 800.
No.
Those are ADUs. Thank you.
Yeah, I was using that as a guidance.
I thought it was 400.
That's a lot of two-bedrooms are like 800,
Yeah.
you know, so I don't, I think, I mean,
I don't
I
think
think
it
that
was
would be
that big.
extreme.
I think it was.
I think it's-
Are we taking the waivers one at a time?
Yes, oh yeah, we don't take them all.
Moving those, or what are we doing?
Are we ready? Who's going to read the first one?
I'll read if you want. Move to grant a waiver from LDCR, or zoning requirements, section 165.32.4I2, not to require sidewalk along the frontage of the property as there is no existing sidewalks anywhere in the vicinity of the proposal site and therefore no opportunity for connection. After review of the waiver request, the board finds the strict conformity to the regulations would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second for discussion.
We have Mr. Nelson as a second. Any comments? Mr. Nelson?
So I know we can't be prognosticating about future plans not before us, but one of the questions that comes to my mind is, do we think there is a reasonable likelihood that other plans in this corridor would eventually create sidewalks that would connect up with this section, or were we really just talking about one section of property frontage with a sidewalk that will never be connected to anything?
Nothing on the side of the road.
Looking at another project coming up there on Humphrey Street, I don't think there's a sidewalk that's even going to West Runningbrook.
Yeah,
Mr.
well,
Chase?
pretty much number one, we've got to judge it on the site plan in front of us, not future plans. And number two, the town cannot maintain a non-contiguous sidewalk and would not support it. Highway safety's never supported it, highway department's never supported it, I believe engineering would never support it. And they can't maintain it, so it would be useless in the wintertime anyway.
Mr. Connors?
Yeah, again, so again, looking for solutions here, impressing upon the developer. You do have a parking lot headed over towards Bedard that gets pretty close. I don't know what the elevations are there. If there's not gonna be a sidewalk for the kids to walk safely over to Bedard, is there some little pathway or something that could be added to the end of your driveway there? Get kids out at the very bottom, along the road, 25 feet of your own private, walkway that needs to be maintained by you guys, because.
May I ask you a question?
Yep.
Bedard is on the side.
Yep.
The school is
Yeah, way in the back.
way up
Right.
there.
Yep.
So you're saying they're going to walk out front on Route 28?
They have to get to the school somewhere. and
Why don't they go up Bedard and then
That's what
cut
I'm saying.
across?
That's what I'm asking, is to try and get them to Bedard so they can go up Bedard to the school. Because otherwise, they've got to go down past Winter Hill all the way to Brady, which is very dangerous. It's on the curve. It doesn't work. I'm just trying, we talked about West Runningbrook being a walkable, connected community as well, and that seems to have just gone out the window. So if there are pathways and things that can be developed, we should be looking at that for safe passageway on foot or bicycle, especially for children. That's all.
Can I suggest, based on that point, that at the bottom of the parking lot, internal to our parking lot, we could do some type of nitpack path or something through the landscaping that, was intentional and brought access to Bedard? So that way they're not coming out to the.
I'm suggesting that. I know you promised Bedard no actress there. I'm not trying to cause problems, but yeah, that would be, a nice little meandering path that you guys maintain would suffice too. It's just getting people safely around without having to be in a car.
I mean, I think we can make that connection to Bedard, it would be mainly, I won't do it from, they'll have to come to the front of the property to do that. That way, we're not encouraging, direct access to all areas of Bedard. But if they want to come up and their intention is to walk up Bedard, we'll have a connection for that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Do we have to add that as a friendly amendment?
I think it will be noted in the minutes, so I think that would be, if you could add it if you want.
Why don't we add that as a friendly amendment?
that way it gets included
Okay.
In the conditionals,
Okay.
right.
All right.
So hearing that, I'll start with Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mr. Ganese,
No.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer,
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
I'm kind of disappointed in the town and the state of New Hampshire and all that for not wanting walkable and pathways and sidewalks, but as Randy says, I know our town doesn't want them, we won't maintain them, so I'm going to vote yes, and I really appreciate the developer considering that walkway, so I'm going to vote yes on this one because of that.
Okay, Mr. Mallaby,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
No.
and the chair votes yes, so that one passes. Going to the next one. You still reading?
Oh, I'll keep reading. Move to grant a waiver from the zoning regs, section 16532.4I2C, not to require at least 2 points of entry and egress into the site. The existing topography of the site does not permit a second point of egress to the property, and the site has been designed to accommodate the circulation of the town's fire apparatus. After review of the waiver, the request, the board finds that specific circumstances relative to the plan or conditions of the land in such plan indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
So, Mr. Connors made the motion, Mr. Nelson is the second. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mr. Ganese.
I'm going to abstain.
You have to say why?
I wanted the site walk because I
Oh,
I wasn't here for the last time that this came before the board, so I know you can look online and everything, but I like to see things
Mr. Nelson,
live.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer,
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but I want to just confirm one thing before I vote on this with the developer. The existing use of that back lot is not going to continue as a logging operation with this.
No.
Thank you. Okay. I appreciate you taking into account the input of the abutters who've been speaking on this and removing that egress and doing what you've done, so I will give you a yes on this one, too.
Mr. Mallaby,
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
It really doesn't make any sense to me that there's only one egress when the rules say that there should be two. But I do see the fire department signed off on it, so.
Off on it.
I just said that. I just said that I do see that the fire department signed off on it, so I will reluctantly vote yes.
And the chair will vote yes, too. So number 2 passes. Going for number 3.
Move to grant a waiver from the zoning regs, section 16532.4I2D, to permit the use of a cul-de-sac for access to the proposed townhomes. The property does not allow for a second access point due to the existing topography constraints. After review of the waiver request, the board finds that specific circumstances relative to the plan or conditions of the land in such plan indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Nelson.
Mr. Chairman, I note that in the section that's being quoted, it says cul-de-sacs are prohibited unless conducive to a harmonious village pattern due to topographic constraints. So there's sort of an exception built right into the reg.
I was going to say, I'm not sure, based on the way they have this design where the driveway goes up, there is parking in the middle and you can circulate around it. I don't think of that as a cul-de-sac. I don't, Randy, is that considered a cul-de-sac from the fire department? My take is that we don't need this waiver, but it's here, so.
We submitted it as an abundance of caution just because we didn't know what that interpretation would be. If the board's interpretation is that that's not a cul-de-sac, we can withdraw that request.
Yeah, it's there. I feel we should vote on it.
Okay, let's go. Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Ganese.
I'm going to abstain for the same reason as I abstained for the last one.
Okay, Mr. Feinhauer,
Yes.
Mr. Connors,
Yes, I appreciate the caution, but don't think it's necessary, but we'll vote yes, so it's not a problem.
Mr. Mallaby,
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
And I'll vote yes, too.
Oh, sorry. And you're not even on virtual.
Okay, next up, move to grant a waiver from LDCR, Section 165324J2, to allow 3 studio apartments as the majority of the building is made up of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. After review of the waiver request, the board finds that strict conformity to the regulations would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Nelson, anybody else?
Discussion?
Mr. Connors, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my main question here is, all of these relate to hardship. I guess I don't necessarily see a hardship of them not being able to do 3 studios and maybe combining that space into one additional 1-bedroom or whatever it ends up being. I don't know the layout of the building, perhaps there's a reason based on, I understand architectural, what's going on in the restaurant end of things, but, quite honestly, less units is better in my opinion, so I'm gonna, indicate that I don't really feel there's a hardship here, but.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Mr. Chase.
I'm going to vote no on this one, for the reason that, number one, I do not know what the square footage would be, and I do find myself agreeing with Mr. Connor. I don't think that's causing an unnecessary hardship to the applicant.
Okay, Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Grunice?
I'm going to vote no for the same reasons as Mr. Chase. I was going to state those reasons.
Mr. Nelson?
I will vote no for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Feinhauer?
No for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Connors?
No for the reasons I stated.
Mr. Malaby?
No.
And Mr. Myers?
No for the same reasons stated by Mr. Chase.
And I'm going to go along with the board. That's no. So that one fails. Oh, I'm
Mr. Chairman, what was your vote?
I'm losing my voice.
Tom was no, right? You were no?
I was a no.
Yeah, she just asked you.
Oh, sorry.
So, Mr. Chair, just for clarification purposes, I respect the board's decision on that. Assuming that the architectural internal design would be modified to have those be, say, 1-bedrooms, there's no issue with that, right? I just want to be, meaning that if we have 72 total units, 3 of which were studios, and now 3 of those become 1-bedroom units, that's acceptable?
And you could also include the parking on that, too. That'd be what, one
Well, the
car?
parking's the same for the studio or for a single
Just a question on that, though. We've been represented, there will be a certain number of 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and then these 3 studios. So are they allowed to just change that mix in order to?
You've just
Told them
asked
they
him
had to.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking.
Okay, I guess, yeah, so my point is they would be able to take a 3-bedroom, perhaps if they needed additional space, is what I'm saying. I guess the total number of units can't be more in the end of this. It's not going to be, forget it.
Okay, all right.
It's late.
To answer your question, yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Going to the next item, the architectural design regulations.
Chairman, I will move to find that pursuant to LDCR Section 170-85, that the application as presented demonstrates substantial compliance with the architectural design regulations. This property is located in the West Running Brook District and meets a very high level of compliance as outlined in Section 170-84.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, open any questions from the board? Mr. Connors?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, you brought up a really good point, and it's kind of what I was driving at, as to how do we actually vote on this, because we don't, and maybe we need to change what we look at in these things conceptually or at this point. To your point specifically, we don't know where the air conditioning units are going. I don't necessarily see all the details here, so that could
One of the prints
significantly
he doesn't
change.
have that we were given on conceptual, where there's mechanical shops in here.
Yep.
Actually, the size of the rooms, the dens, the dining areas, and the room, I forgot I had this down there.
Well, I think it shows the
So
internal, but I guess I'm talking like, rooftop units, or, it could be off. So I'm just saying, to me, when we say yes on this, because we're saying it meets a very high level of compliance, we don't really know whether it does. I mean, to some degree, I'm a little concerned about
Mr.
that.
Nelson?
So I guess I would suggest that if there is a substantial deviation from what was presented and therefore approved, that they need to come back for a condition compliance hearing. If they end up, having flat sections of roof and fenestration and fences and stuff up there, that changes the roof line quite a bit. It is somewhat of a judgment call up to staff as to what is substantial enough to come back.
Okay.
But no, we're not actually approving final construction blueprints, because that's not within our purview.
Okay, that's fine. Like I said, I think you hit it on the head. I will trust our staff to be watchdogs on this.
And we can always ask for granite.
Yeah, no,
Judge.
I would agree with David, and I think what we've done it several times, is that in your condition of approval on the later motion, you just add one more item to say, architectural staff review, subject to staff review, and it may come back to you as an administrative item. We've done that in architectural like 4 or
Yeah,
5
that's true.
times.
And are you amending the motion to include that a substantial deviation will
Yes.
come back? Okay,
Well, I think we're going to actually put that in the conditions of approval.
perfect.
That's what she's doing now, yeah. Do we have to do the finding of facts?
We got to vote on this first.
Get a vote.
I thought we already did, sorry.
No.
So do we have a motion of the reading of the finding of the facts?
Did, in a second.
No, we have to vote on the architectural.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was... Starting with Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Anise,
Sure.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer,
Yes.
Mr. Connors,
Yes, I'm going to trust our staff to keep an eye on it.
Mr. Malaby,
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, that passes.
Do we need to read that?
I'll give you a spell. Mr. Chairman, I move to make the following findings of fact. The board finds that the proposed plan provides safe and efficient vehicular and pedestrian access, and the design and construction of the access ways and walkways are adequate to accommodate the anticipated volume of traffic proposed by the development. Further, the board finds the proposed parking plan is adequate for the site and meets the parking density requirements for the use as noted by the waiver approved this evening. Further, the board finds the landscape plan meets the intent of the regulations. Further, the board finds the stormwater management as proposed is designed to control the post-development runoff so that it does not exceed pre-development runoff. Further, the board finds the utility construction standards are met and the property has a sufficient number of hydrants for the proposed use. Further, the board finds the exterior lighting, solid waste storage, and snow storage provisions and erosion and sediment control provisions are adequate. Further, the board finds that the plan meets the dimensional requirements of the West Running Brook District in that the frontage exceeds 50 feet, the front, side, and rear setbacks are at a minimum 10 feet, and no proposed structure is closer than 30 feet to an abutting structure. Further, the board finds the proposed height of the buildings is not excessive, meets the intent of the district, and maintains the character of the district. Further, the board finds that there is more than 1/3 of the buildable area reserved as green space, about 49% reserved once constructed. And the plan provides a sufficient buffer to protect existing residential uses based on the proposed landscape plan, the abutting wetland, and the manner in which the buildings are situated.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
No, there's lots
Oh,
more.
there's more.
Wait a minute, there's more?
He's only half
Wait,
done.
there's
10
more.
minutes.
Where are we?
Page 3.
Page 3,
Want me
pursuant.
to take it over?
You've got a whole other page.
All right. Further, the board finds pursuant to the information provided in the Dubay Group's memorandum dated February 23, 2023, to the board relevant to the Town of Derry zoning ordinance, section 165-32.4.E, the board finds the proposed development is appropriate for the area in that, 1, the development does not overwhelm pre-existing development near the proposed site. 2, environmental resources are not detrimentally impacted by the development. 3, the project is consistent with a master plan. 4, the plan is consistent with the architectural design regulations specific to the West Burning Brook District. And 5, there are no other relevant factors that would affect the health, safety, and welfare of the town. And we keep going, right?
Yep.
Further, the board finds that 72 residential units 63 apartments and 9 townhomes are appropriate for the development, given its proximity to pre-existing residential uses. Further, the board finds that the proposed density is not less than what would be allowed by a conventional subdivision in the low-density residential zone, 1 lot per 3 acres, where this lot contains 5.5 acres, and a density bonus has not been requested. Further, the board finds that the overall design of the project is cited to best preserve natural vistas and takes advantage of the existing topography. Further, the board finds that the structures on the lot are interconnected with sidewalks, and the layout suits the existing topography and natural features found on the site so as to minimize the cuts and fills throughout the site. Further, the board finds that the opportunity for pedestrian connections through the internal lot and the opportunity to connect adjacent lots via a sidewalk along the frontage has been waived. Further, the board finds the plan meets the intent of the streetscape requirements with regard to trees, buffered areas, public spaces, and lighting. Further, the board finds that the estimated future cost to widen the Island Pond Road Route 28 intersection is $1,750,000, and this project will have a 1% impact on the overall intersection capacity based on the Hoyle and Tanner Associates traffic study of the West Running Brook corridor and information provided in the traffic report prepared by the applicant's traffic engineer.
Very good.
Is that it?
That's it.
Yeah, I moved all that.
Second. We have a second.
Second.
Any further questions? Does anybody remember the beginning of it?
I think that's a record.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Grenese?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
I'm going to vote no on this because of the density still. It really just seems too much for 5 acres, but I really appreciate the applicant's efforts to date. I think there's more that could be done.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So moving on,
The last page.
All right.
Two amendments.
So what was the second amendment?
So there's the first one is perform test borings for potential
yeah, test.
contaminants to the rear of the property in the location of the proposed townhomes.
And I guess the applicant had asked for specifics, or George, so I would suggest the town set those bounds of that area. We know where it is.
All right, I'll give this a whirl.
Oh, and then, and then the second
Yeah,
one
and the
was-
other one
you
is
have that one.
architectural changes
You
come
got
back.
that. All right, perfect.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve pursuant to RSA citation missing. After review and deliberation of the mixed-use site plan application for PID 05038-001, Spofford Development owner Watts Auto Salvage, the board finds the applicant has satisfied the general requirements of the West Running Brook District and the Land Development Control Regulations, or in cases where the regulation cannot be met, has satisfied the waiver requirements. Therefore, the motion is to approve a conditional use permit to the Town of Derry zoning ordinance, section 165-32.4.F, and pursuant to RSA 676:4, Roman 1, completed application with the following conditions. Comply with the forthcoming VHB review letter and any subsequent reviews of the plan, subject to the owner's signature, subject to on-site inspection by the town's engineer, establish escrow for the resetting of bounds or certified the bounds have been set, establish escrow as required to complete the project, note all approved waivers on the plan, obtain written approval from the planning director or designee that the GIS disk is received and operable and complies with LCDR section 170-61.C, subject to the receipt of applicable state or local permits relating to the project. Change of use applications for the business tenant will be required to be filed with the planning department. Signs for the project will require administrative review by the planning board and shall be comply with the Town of Derry zoning ordinance, section 165-101.12. Pursuant to RSA 673:21, section Roman 5, the applicant shall provide a fair share contribution toward future signal improvements at Webster's Corner intersection. The fair share contribution to be held in escrow shall be $17,500 pursuant to RSA 673:21, Roman 5, little e in parens. The The funds shall be returned if not utilized within 6 years of the date escrow is established. Add a note to the plan stating the applicant will not phase the project and the non-residential portion of the project will be occupied on or before the residential portions of the project. Conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months. Test borings shall be performed on the upper portion of the parcel where the logging trucks currently sit. Changes in the architectural renderings that are of a significant nature must come back to the planning board for a condition compliance hearing.
So,
We have a
point of
motion.
order or point of, so the discussion we had a few moments
Well,
ago.
we can't do that till we have a second to have it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
So we have a second on the floor, now we can.
That note, add a note to the plan that the applicant will not phase the project and the non-residential portion of the project will be occupied on or before the residential portions of the project. Again, that's the way I understood it. That's the way this waiver writes, occupied. So if that's not the case, we better edit it now because, and my understanding is that's what we agreed on, folks. We didn't want empty commercial space just so they could get the residential. So
So what are you reading from?
what he just read, the third to the last, well,
Right
the
here.
second to the last bullet before we added the other two
Oh.
is stating it
Yeah,
must be
I
occupied.
think that's probably consistent with the reg, although the reg is a little bit convoluted in its wording, but it's probably consistent.
I just don't want this developer to get
Mr.
screwed. You know, you gotta know what you're getting into, that's all.
Mr. Chair, could I make an amendment to that?
Will be constructed, or do you want it constructed or occupied?
But that's for this particular project then, right? We're giving them a waiver for this project that they can just construct it and not have to occupy it. So that could be an empty restaurant forever, is what we're saying.
I'm just asking if you guys
No,
want
I'm
to
just
change it. that's
making
all.
sure we're clear.
I would like to make an amendment to it.
So let's finally, so we have a motion, we have a second. So amendment's welcomed.
Can I?
Go ahead.
I'd like to change that to add a note to the plan stating that the applicant will not phase the project and the non-residential portion of the project will be constructed before the residential portions of the project or concurrently.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, bring it back to the board.
Again, we built the West Running Brook District. I was one of the folks who was lobbying for the West Running Brook District with Bev way back when a lot of other folks were against it. I was the one who actually asked for this particular property to be added to it because I wanted to help Mr. Crete. I wanted to help the neighborhood. This was not the intent. As I said, I'm almost willing to get rid of the commercial piece on this particular property to make it an even better project. So I don't think we should do this. We're going down a slippery slope because once you do it for one, you do it for everybody. So I just worry about that legal precedent.
Mr.
agree.
I have some concerns with building this, and then maybe you don't get a restaurant in there, and then you have a bunch of residential sitting empty because of this statement in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I could just add, I mean, I don't think the board legally can say you must have a commercial area occupied because that's beyond anyone's physical control. So let's say it's occupied by a pizza place, and then 6 months they go out of business. Do all the residents have to move out? I mean, obviously that can't happen. So, I mean, I guess my point is that the intent is absolutely to build both. They're going to be investing significant money and resources in the construction of the commercial component. So the goal is to have it occupied. I just don't know if we can legally insist that it is occupied and remains occupied. And if that,
Point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It is 10 o'clock. I'm looking at the
Oh.
clock down there.
We have a motion on
That
the
clock
table.
is, I know, but I'm just letting you know.
Oh,
that
I've been
clock is
watching
on
that
10.
one, so.
Motion takes
Then we can
precedent.
go for an extra 10 minutes for a
Point
vote
of
of the
order.
board, right?
So going against our rules.
To move to suspend the rules.
Second.
So we have a motion to suspend the rules. Mr. Chase,
yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Malavey.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. We've suspended the rules. So do you want to continue on what you wanted to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So all I'm saying is that I think we're the intent is the same. I just don't know if there's an ability from a legal standpoint to say a space has to be physically occupied by a use, because how can you, for how long? For a day? You know, I mean, it's a convoluted piece. I think the amendment that Mr. Healy had stated to me, that makes sense. You can't construct the townhouses, although they probably would like to. You can't construct those first. You have to build that building, and the commercial section is being constructed while the residential section is being constructed. So what we have to protect from, this isn't trying to be a sleight of hand or something, but you can't construct 72 apartment units at the same time you're building the commercial. You market the commercial for lease and occupancy. If it doesn't get occupied immediately, they still have to be able to occupy the residences that they built. So that's all I'm saying. I think that's a reasonable request.
So you'd be in favor of Mr.
I would be in
Healy's,
favor of the amendment. That satisfies the concern from my end, and if it satisfies your concern, then I'm all set.
Any further? You ready, Mr. Chase?
So we're voting on the amendment now?
Yep.
What are we voting on?
Oh, it's a friendly amendment. You want to read your amendment again?
Yes.
Oh,
Mr. Chair, can I just hear that amendment one more time, the way it was, the language?
Yes, so I want to amend to state, add a note to the plan stating that the applicant will not phase the project in the non-residential portion of the project will be constructed before the residential portions of the project or concurrently.
Okay, thank you.
So I got Mr. Chase, we got Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mr. Guinese.
I'm going to abstain. It's a good plan, but I don't have, I really wanted a site walk. I want to look at some stuff, and I can't make a formal, informed decision, yes or no, so I'm abstaining.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
On this particular project, I'm going to say yes, and I think this is the second project where, and I think Mr. Nelson's pointed out a number of times, the intent of our West Running Brook district has gone out the window. I think before any other projects start coming forward, we need to revisit the West Running Brook district and tighten this thing up so we don't have these problems every time. So I'll vote yes on it because I think in this particular project, it would be a hardship.
Mr. Ballamy.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that passes. Because we moved the friendly amendment into that, so now the whole thing? So I need a motion.
So the main motion is back on the floor for a vote.
This is to approve the project, correct?
Yep,
As amended.
as amended. Was there a second?
Yes, I think Mr. Myers?
Yes, I seconded
I'm
it.
sorry.
Thank you, Liz, for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Okay, starting with Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Guinese.
All right, so I'm going to abstain. I thought the last vote was for that, so, and that's for that reason. It's been a long day, long night.
Yep, Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
No, and since I have to say why, I really wanted to be able to say yes to this project because it was me who wanted the junkyard developed, and I worked hard with Bev on the West Running Brook District. It's the density that gets me. I think that this is a viable project with one level less of apartments, bringing it down to maybe 50 or 60, whatever it is. This is maximizing a 5-acre spot lot beyond what the West Running Brook District was really supposed to do, and it's right dab in the middle. All three sides around it are single or two-family residential. It's a tough spot. I want to give super kudos to the developer for doing so much and trying so hard and listening, and I hope other developers, when they come before us, do the same. Really appreciate what you've done. I still just feel like, if there was just a little bit more, I would be able to say yes, and I wish I could, but I'm not going to.
All right, Mr. Mallaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
The proposal is not perfect, but life isn't perfect either, so I'll vote yes.
Chair will vote yes also. So, I think we're finished on that. Congratulations, you've got it.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'm not finished it, because I have to be on notice that anybody that's aggrieved by this motion, this plan, has 30 days to either come back or go to Superior Court. So we have a motion to adjourn.
I seconded it, or somebody else seconded it, I don't know.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? I thought you were going to abstain.
Thank you for
You
the
left
time.
already?
Appreciate it.
We don't have anything to sign tonight?
No.
Okay.
Well, I don't know, I see things down there.
Liz?
No decision?
Liz?
Yes.
Do we have anything to sign? Do you have anything to sign?
Okay. Check.
Oh, I get that, yeah. You gotta sign the minutes.
Okay. Oh, thank you, I'm sorry. I'm doing this wrong. There you go. Puzzle. It is a puzzle.